bad.
What's up, my friends? Another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Rika the Brandes, also known as Ricky Brandes, and a great episode for you today. Today we have fan favorite Dr. Jessica Rose returns. Yes, she returns. She was just on another episode not too long ago. Definitely check that out. And today she returns with somebody that she suggested I hook up with and have on the show. And his story moved me, and I'm so glad I had him on because we had a awesome about 3-hour podcast, 3-hour chat. So it was really fun. We got into so many different things, and it was a great mix of 3 different characters just chatting away for 3 hours. And it was a fun and informative conversation, which are my favorite type of conversations. So the guest that joins Dr. Jessica Rose and I is Corporal Daniel Bulford. And he was Trudeau's personal sniper, and he leaves his career, his job that he loved, because of the vaccine mandates in Canada. He also shares what it's like to protect high-ranked politicians in Canada and much, much more. So I'll try to get through this intro quickly. Of course, this is a value for value show. If you guys get some value out of these conversations, please, if you can, financially give some value back. And this was a 3-hour podcast. Luckily, with the winter months here, work has slowed down for me. And when work slows down, obviously that sucks financially. But it is nice to have more time for the podcast. My goal would be to do this full time. And as I've told you guys for years now, that's going to continue to be the goal. I would have more time to sit down and have longer shows and give you more consistent longer shows. So please, if you can support the show, please contribute to the goal of eventually doing this full time. Join our Patreon page. If you don't like Patreon, then I have a PayPal account that you can donate to. Maybe you're in the holiday spirit, you want to donate there. I have a merch store if you want to represent some Ripple Effect Podcast merch. I have t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, all types of stuff, kid clothes. So go check out the merch store. I also have a Bitcoin wallet, a crypto wallet. If you want to send some crypto, that'd be very much appreciated. So anything you can do to help financially is appreciated. But if you can't financially support the show, don't worry about it. Review the show, share the show, subscribe to the show. That all helps and it goes a long way. I know Ryan from Last American Vagabond and Dr. Jessica Rose and other people have told me that there's people that are in good financial situations that are willing to help and support content creators like ourselves. Hopefully, if that's true, eventually they'll run into this show and they'll help out financially, because they understand the importance of the Ripple Effect Podcast and the importance in the conversations and the guests that I bring to you. I guess the last thing is you can find all the things I referred to in regards to ways to support the show on the rippleeffectpodcast.com or rickyvranz.com. Both URLs will bring you to the same website, and you can find all my work there. You can find Ricky Rants on Rockfin, which is my exclusive Rockfin show, and also the Union of the Unwanted, all uncensored, for free, forever, thanks to Matt from Content Save, who helped me create an amazing website where you can find all my content censorship free. So no matter what happens on any other platform, the rippleeffectpodcast.com will always have all my content, all my shows, all my links, all the ways to support the show, and much more, always uncensored. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to the Union of the Unwanted, the Zoom conference call of thinkers, researchers, and content creators. It's a show I host with Sam Tripoli, Midnight Mike from the OBDM show, and Charlie Robinson. So please subscribe to the Union of the Unwanted anywhere you subscribe to the Ripple Effect Podcast, Podcast Addict, Google Podcasts, Spotify. It's available on all those places and more. And you can also find the videos on Rockfin and Odyssey, or just go to theunionoftheunwanted.com to find links to our merch, all our social media accounts, and much more. So check that out. Finally, that's it. Sorry about the long intro prior to the long episode. Hopefully everyone is doing well. Remember, provoke thought, start your own ripple any way you can, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Peace.
Even Americans are interested in what the RCM or what Mounties are doing.
That's the cool thing about the podcast is that it almost seems like if you got a gig at a local radio station, it'd be a downgrade because you'd only be connecting with people in your region,
in your area. Yeah.
Where with podcasts, it's listened to everywhere. I mean, it stuns me where just where some of the download numbers come from. I mean, from countries all over the place, and it's weird too because it's like there's weird countries. I shouldn't say weird countries, but there's countries where I'm kind of surprised that the show does so well. I mean, this show in the English speaking countries like Canada, UK, the US, it does really well. It's like always like in the top 40 in the philosophy podcast, which is
right on.
Yeah, so it's always, I go up to 50, come down to 30. It counts how many I put out and who's on and whatnot, but always in that range, which is pretty cool, especially with knowing how many podcasts are out there. And but then in other countries, like I don't know if it's El Salvador, one of the Latin American countries, it's like top 3 all the time. And I'm just like, really? I'm like, this is so weird, So and it's funny because I always joke about this. The country I was born in, my home country of Portugal, it does horrendously awful. So it's like nobody in Portugal wants to support me. I don't know what it is. I figured I'd be getting some Portuguese support, but maybe I don't know, maybe because they're near beaches, they have better things to do. It does seem like some of those countries, like, maybe they just don't want to sit around and listen to podcasts. I think that if you're certain type of people, listen to them. I think it's a lot of people who commute. I get a lot of feedback from people who commute, and it's a good time killer. People who maybe have like mindless jobs that they do, late night shift where they're just kind of moving stuff, or a physical job where you can put something in that's thought provoking. But it's a great time killer. That's how I got into them. I mean, I started in 2013, but before that, all the driving I was doing for a while, it was like just a pointless part of my day. And it became a interesting part of my day, a part of my day I actually looked forward to because
me too.
Yeah. So it's awesome. I look forward to it because it's like, I can actually sit down and, I'm driving, but I'm sitting down and I'm engaged and listening to something that's thought provoking. I can actually learn something and be exposed to new ideas. So it became, I loved it. And because I was a musician, I already had some of the equipment and had some of the knowledge on how to like do audio editing and stuff. I'm like, maybe I could figure out how to do this. And it gave me a sense of purpose. It gave me just, I felt like I was doing something. And that's why I named it the Ripple Effect, because it was my way of creating my little ripple and hoping I could, do my little part. And so that's why I'm always motivating people to do the same thing. Start a show, start a YouTube channel, start whatever. And
start a band.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Start anything and even regardless, and obviously success is different for everybody. And even when I started, I'm just a Portuguese kid who lives in Massachusetts who, barely graduated high school, who, stopped playing music and felt unfulfilled and just felt like the spark and the need to do something. And the show's has kind of become an example of the ripple effect and how you never know where things are going to go. I mean, I've had Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson on the show, who was chief of staff for Colin Powell when he was in the White House. I've had Jesse Ventura on. I've had Freeway Ricky Ross on. I mean, so many amazing people. Eddie Bravo. I mean, people that I was a fan of, and people that I'm just like stunned that they'll sit down and talk to me. and so it's like it's kind of motivation for the average Joe to be like, hey, listen, just do it. That's the first step of fighting procrastination. It's just like, get up and do it. And even if one person listens or 2 people listen, you're going to feel much better and much happier. You're going to feel like, we lost Jessica. We'll be, you'll feel much better knowing you're doing something. And to me, that was a big part of it, is like, even when I started and I didn't have many people listening, I felt so good every time I uploaded it. I'm like, I'm contributing some sense of positive energy, something that isn't selling people a agenda or doing something. You said for you it's very similar. Are you a big podcast fan or?
Oh yeah, I've been listening to podcasts like nonstop for, I don't know, probably 5 years. Yeah. One of the first, I mean, Joe Rogan is how a lot of people initially get exposed. But then I started to, and Jocko Willink, guys like that, right? They're very appealing to someone in my profession. But then I really started to get into it when I was listening to Jordan Peterson here in Canada. And then like Brett Weinstein and Heather Hying from Dark Horse podcast. Like those are probably the two I listen to the most. And then Russell Brand has taken off as well, right? And so I mean, there's so many fascinating people out there that can do this. And like I feel like you can get like a very high quality education just listening to these people. Like it's almost like you're getting personal lectures. And like you said, you can do it while you drive, you can do it at work if you're on your computer. Sometimes depending on what you're doing, I have to like pause it and switch to music because I'm too focused on what I'm doing that I'm not catching as much of the podcast as I would like. But I think I think that is probably what is taking so much attention away from traditional media. And that's why you're seeing such a degeneration in their content, because they've become desperate to keep people's attention. So it's all just like attention grabbing headlines and provocative content to elicit like a strong reaction.
Yeah, so my co-host, he's kind of in a similar field as you. He was my original co-host when I started the show. I remember when I first was selling him on the idea of doing a podcast, he looked at me like I was crazy, and he's just like, wait, we're gonna talk and we're gonna record it. Who's gonna want to listen to this? It's when you really just like say it in those that general way, it does sound kind of silly, but when you start breaking it down to why it's appealing, and I started breaking it down to him, I'm like, one of the reasons why I chose him to be my co-host is because he was one of those friends, and we all have those type of friends where you sit down, you have a drink, and it's almost, it's just a matter of time before you get in those deep conversations, questioning things and maybe sharing some personal life stories and those friends that have interesting perspectives on things and interesting life experiences that are fascinating. I'm like, those conversations are appealing to us. We have fun. Like those are the nights you go home, you're like, wow, that was a great night with my buddies. I'm like, all we're doing is recording those conversations and sharing them. And when you put it in that way, like it makes more sense to people. And that's why it's funny, because my original YouTube channel is banned and got censored off YouTube. But I have a new YouTube channel where I was going back in the archives and just putting up clips, because I still think YouTube, there's a lot of people who unfortunately still use it to look for information. So I'm like, if I can reach some people on YouTube, I might as well utilize a tool if it's still there. And so I started a clips only YouTube channel, and I took a clip from my very first episode. And I remember it was in 2013, and I was telling my co-host why I thought podcasts were going to blow up. And I'm like, at that time, I already felt like they blew up. Like everybody always feels like they're late to the party. I'm like, oh, but I'm like, it's even going to blow up more. And I was telling him that's, that was one of the reasons why. And also the fact that people were understanding that the TV, the newspapers, everybody had a agenda, and everybody seems like they're not open to exploring ideas. They're all about like force feeding you their ideas and their perspectives. And podcasts were one of the few places where you had like a Dan Carlin, who's been on my show.
Yes.
Daniele Bignelli, who's been on my show a bunch. He was one of the first guests on my show. And all these people who were willing to I'm like, oh, I'm hearing a historian, not just share, information on a lecture, but actually bouncing ideas off somebody. And then somebody gets to ask questions that are interesting, and you get to explore those ideas. I'm like, it seems like uncensored, like a place where people are having organic conversations. And I thought that there was a need for that in the world. And that was why I enjoyed it so much. And I'm like, I think eventually it's going to blow up, because people are going to get sick of feeling like everybody's selling you something, or everybody has a agenda, or everybody, nobody's doing, having a organic conversation. And so I think it's still going to grow more. I mean, just podcasts have blown up. I mean, I forget how many millions of podcasts shows there are out there. I think the average show lasts 7 episodes. A lot of people start one and then they give up. But yeah, so but I think that it's one of the few spots where you can have, I've had Dr. Robert Malone on my show. I've had so many amazing people on the show who are willing to speak out, and podcasts have been just one of those one of the best platforms where if you're a whistleblower or if you want to be outspoken, you can go to, because there's also seems to be less censorship. On video platforms, there seems to be more censorship. I've only had issues with so the first time I had Mickey Willis, who actually was just on my show.
Yeah.
I had him back on yesterday, but the first time he was on my show, I had issues with iTunes, but you could still get it on Spotify and other platforms where you get people's RSS feeds. But eventually it showed up on iTunes, and it was resolved, I guess, or they stopped censoring it. And then also Del Bigtree, during the height of the lockdown when he was on, that was censored. But besides that, if you use like a podcast addict, which I like, it's one of my favorite apps, you get the RSS feed directly from the person, and there is no middleman. There is no Spotify or iTunes or something like that. So it seems like there's no censorship. If you subscribe to my show on Podcast Addict, you're always getting the feed directly from me. And that way you have no middleman who's going to be deciding if they want to put ads in it or if they want to censor something. So Podcast Addict, and there's plenty of apps like that. That just happens to be my favorite. But and then you look at YouTube, so like just a handful of I guess issues I've had with RSS feeds and iTunes. But YouTube, I mean, everybody's being censored. You brought up Russell Brand and the Dark Horse podcast. Those are like basically like they're two of the handful of shows that are still worth watching on YouTube, because everybody's been censored, everybody's been banned, everybody's moving on to Odyssey or Rockfit or all these other ones, which I actually think helps those platforms, because now, like before, there were still some content creators that I found interesting where I would still go to YouTube looking for some information. But now it's like, if I'm looking for information, I'm not going on YouTube, because I'm going to, if I want to watch cat videos, maybe, but if I want to watch cat videos, I can call Jessica, and eventually
I go there for cat videos and Jenna Marbles. I love her. She's so funny. If you don't know who Jenna Marbles is, she's hilarious.
What's her face is also from Canada, right? Isn't she Canadian? Have you
ever
watched What's Her Face? You ever watch her YouTube channel? Oh,
you know?
Look her up. Yeah, she's awesome. She's from Canada, and she does these short little videos where she'll talk about what's going on in the world. And she's been censored quite a bit, so she might have up. You know what I'm talking about?
I think so. I can't remember her real name.
I can't either.
But is she the one that did the Dear Fat People video and got like just attacked about it?
Maybe, yeah, because she's funny, she's hilarious, but
like she's a comedian, right?
Yeah. I mean, she's gonna. Yeah, there's some good people in Canada. There's
hey, like plenty of good people.
Corbett is Canadian, and he's one of my favorites. James Corbett. So there's the Grimerica guys. I mean, there's tons of great.
Jordan Peterson.
I had Adam Scorgi on back in the day, who did the Union, the business behind getting high, I think was the subtitle to the documentary. It was like the biggest selling documentary at the time. And I also had somebody from The Corporation, which is also another Canadian documentary, really good. If you guys have never watched it, I think it's long. It's like 2 or 3 hours. It's called The
Corporation.
Yeah, it was one of the best researched, because before podcasts, I mean, I was an addict to documentaries. I would stay up late at night and just watch documentaries. And The Corporation,
me too.
Yeah, it was really well researched. They took years to make it, and they went into how, and it's almost more relevant now than it was when it came out. They went into how corporations will get psychologists and scientists to basically brainwash you to buy their product, convince you to buy their stuff, and how it basically went deeper than so most people know how marketing works and stuff, but many people don't know about Edward Bernays and his techniques. He was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and how he would take the lessons learned from his uncle, and not just he wasn't just intrigued with how the brain worked and how people were motivated and their desires and stuff, but he wanted to understand how to manipulate people. And he coined the term propaganda. He wrote the book Propaganda, and which basically the same techniques are used in marketing. The only difference is, like, after the world wars, propaganda wasn't a very wouldn't be a very successful a word to use. So they changed it to marketing, and you look at the marketing tactics and propaganda, it's basically the same thing. You're trying to get people to buy shit they don't really need. And he understood that a lot of our decision making was subconscious. It wasn't conscious, it was subconscious. Like, one of his first hires, people who hired him to do work for him, was Lucky Strike. And Lucky Striper, yeah, right, it was the green labeled cigarette company.
Cigarettes,
yeah. And they were like, okay, 50% of the population that are women aren't buying our product. How do we get them to buy it? So he did some research or whatever, and then he's like, they didn't like the color of the green. So what he did, he got some fashion designers to make the green like that, that season's new color. And then he also created a fake protest where he got all these women, and then got newspapers to go there and report on this, where women were basically using cigarettes as a way of showing the public that, like, hey, if men can smoke, why can't we smoke? We're gonna break these boundaries, and cigarettes are just going to be another example of us showing how women can do anything guys can do. And yeah, so he indirectly, I forget what the percentage was, but he indirectly raised the sales without ever making a cigarette commercial. It was all these indirect ways, so that's how. And then eventually, those same tactics were used for war propaganda and propaganda for many other things. So it's I think a lot of times we like to think that we just look at logical, we come up to a logical conclusion based on just information we're fed, but there's so many subconscious desires and wants and things that are going on that I think has a effect on why we discredit something immediately, or why we believe something else quickly with little evidence, just because of other reasons. I mean, I've had conversations where people, I'm like, why are you so passionate about this one topic? I remember having a conversation with somebody one time where they seemed so level-minded, and so many things we were talking about, we could find middle ground. And then we talked about unions, and if there's pros and cons to it, but once we got into the cons of unions, he lost his mind. And then come to find out, like, his dad was in the union, he's in the union, and it's like, okay, well, that doesn't like mean that we can't see that there's some people who are taking this maybe good idea and using it for their own purposes, for profit or whatever. But it was just, you could see this flaw in his thinking, where just like, okay, now you were brought up to believe that unions are always good and always great, so you can't see the flaws in that. And I think that a lot of us have those. That's why I love talking to Jessica, and we'll have these long conversations where during the conversation we challenge our own ideas, and I think people really appreciate that, and that we try to not be married to any ideas or subscribe to any dogma, and there's nothing that we won't question. And I think people really enjoy, and we need more of that. So this is why I host a podcast, because I never shut the hell up. So let's get into Danny's story, because that's why we're really here.
No, I'm kidding.
I'm sure somebody is screaming at their I was going to say iPod, like anybody has an iPod.
I'm just kidding. I'm always interested in what you're saying. And I was just gonna say, imagine if these evil geniuses used their powers for good. Imagine where we would be. Anyway.
But don't you think it's an addiction, right? Because once you have
power addiction,
everything, yeah. I mean, it's like the one, money and power addiction's the one addiction that we kind of gloss over, right? We don't look at it as a issue where you need help. And it's like, it's the same symptoms. If you just describe the symptoms of addiction, they have those symptoms. Like you'll do anything for it. You'll lie, cheat, steal. You'll throw out your moral compass to get more of this stuff. Once you get this high, you need a stronger high. And it always, and I think I brought this up a few times on this show, but remember that old horror movie Hostel? Right?
Oh, it's not old. I still watch that like all the time. And there are 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're all great.
Is that the one with like Buzzsaw or whatever?
No, that's Saw.
Okay, Saw. Okay.
Like this creepy human hunting organization, which I'm sure is based on reality. And they like take advantage of young travelers and end up selling them to these weirdos who want
like hostel as in the place you stay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Fascinating. The ideas that come from this, they had to come from either reality or I don't know where they came from.
Well, at the end of the day, like, so initially you don't know what's going on. And then as the movie, the plot kind of unfolds, you find out that it's like these rich people who are paying to this corporation or business or whatever that would get children so they could torture them, and they would get off by torturing children, and it would be like rich businessmen, I mean, in suits or whatever. And it can't be that far from reality, because you think about it, if you've been to every island, if you've had every material thing that you could imagine, what's your next high, right? Like how do you get excited about anything? And if you're a sick person, which there's been studies and people who have written about this, about how a lot of people who get ahead in business and in politics have the traits of a psychopath. So because you almost have to be a psychopath to not care about morals or care about others or whatever. Like, so now you have resources and you have psychopathic traits, and you're running out of things to get you high. Like, it's not out of the realm of possibility. And when you
no, not at all.
No. And when you look at like, all these Skull and Bones and all these secret societies, some of the weird shit that they do. And I mean, remember that Nixon tape where he talked about Bohemian Grove, and he's like, it's just a bunch of faggots or whatever, something like that. And he's just like, so I'm like, what did he mean by that? Like,
yeah, exactly. It's all there. You know what? Jim Carrey's another funny Canadian. And I don't know, I think he kind of lost the plot lately, but he said something once that was so illuminating. And it's exactly what you're saying, Ricky. It alludes to that concept. I think it was something like this. He thinks that most of the world's problems would be solved if everyone could get to the end of having all that material wealth and satisfy all of those baser needs, and then come to a place where they actually have to ask themselves, okay, what do I want now? What do I need? It's a different thing, we're not talking about psychopaths here. It's just the end of wanting material things, like, and then getting to this place where you're actually asking like the important question, like, what do I need to feel happy or satisfied? Or and if everyone had those like baser needs met, then we probably wouldn't be in this shit all the time. Anyway, I it just reminded me of that. And but I think you're right. It's like when you tie that concept to the addiction. And you're right. I think all addictions they're just the same thing. They're a disconnect from I don't know, self or earth or something. I don't know. But when you combine that with like psychopathy, then you have a serious situation on your hands.
Yeah,
which explains a lot.
Jim Carrey, he is fascinating, and sometimes he had a quote I remember a while ago when he said, I wish everybody could be famous for a day to realize that that's not what you want, or something along those.
That's exactly where it came from.
Yeah. And it's true, because you look at the fame and fortune, and you look at having, but I'm like, look at how many of them have killed themselves or are drug addicts or, overdose. Like it obviously doesn't bring you happiness, but yet most of us have been tricked into believing like that's what we want and that's what will bring us happiness. I mean, we spend our whole lives, you know, many of us spend our whole life just like trying to gather more material things and more material wealth, and you're going to get to that finish line and realize like, holy shit, like none of this really brought me happiness. And what was the sacrifice to get all these things? A lot of times you sacrifice free time, you sacrifice mental stability because you're probably stressed and, you know, working too much and stressed. You're neglecting maybe your family, your friends. So it really is a well played trick on most people. So it's yeah, I mean, these bigger questions, that's where like I've kind of come around again to religion and spirituality a little bit. I'm not a religious person, and I was raised a Catholic and kind of wasn't a fan of religion because I focus a lot of time researching all the evils of religion, and now I'm coming back around and like, okay, well, I can see the positive part of it, and that's the aspect of like just asking those bigger questions. Like some people need some type of spirituality or religion, or if not, you'll get too caught up in your everyday routine and you never have a reason to like hit the brakes, pump the brakes, and ask like, okay, why are we here? And what's truly happiness? And does being good to your neighbor bring you happiness? Do you feel good? Yeah, then maybe that's what I should be doing, you know, and maybe that's what I should be more worried about is who I am and how I treat others. And yeah, and I think, you know, that's where artistic people, I think, and musicians, and, you know, Jessica and I have talked about this, where I think they relate to the left more because they look at corporations and capitalistic people as like, oh, you know, all they care about is profit, and they're, you know, they're greedy, and but now, you know, I think as you get older, you realize like, oh, they're all just playing us. I mean, none of them care about any of these issues, and you know, government and corporations, like it's not that one is the issue or the other one's the issue, is that they're both the issues, because as long as there's people, there's going to be greedy people and somebody's going to take advantage of things. And but yeah, so let's get into to Danny's story. 2 hours later, and and let's get, I mean, I'll just let you take it away from how far back you want to go, and share a little bit of your background and an origin story, and kind of some of the stuff you've been going through.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this conversation today. I was born in Saskatchewan. My dad was a member of the RCMP there. And then when I was young, we moved to Alberta, to the northern Alberta, Grand Prairie area. That's where my dad and his family were originally from. And so that's where I spent the bulk of my childhood. That's where I joined the RCMP from when I was 24 years old. So that was in August of 2006. I joined the RCMP and went to the Depot Training Academy in Regina, Saskatchewan. That's where every RCMP in the country has to go through 6 months of training there. That's like your core police training before you get posted. And with the RCMP, you have to agree to serve anywhere in Canada as part of your employment agreement. And so while I was there, I went to an evening recruitment presentation about working in Northern Canada. So like specifically Northwest Territories. And so after leaving that, I got on the phone with my now wife. She was my common law at the time. And we talked about it. And I said, you know, you can get put anywhere, right? Even places that are not that desirable to be posted. But it sounded like if you agreed to go to the north, you could do your roughly 3 to 5 year commitment, depending on which territory you were posted to. And then afterwards, you it's not a golden ticket, but you get a little bit more influence as to where you get posted afterward. So I had previously worked in the Yukon Territory, which is right next to Alaska. And with my forest firefighting job, when I worked for the Alberta Forest Service, and I thought the Yukon was amazing. And I knew that my wife and her family had done a family trip to the Yukon prior to me and her being in a relationship. And she really enjoyed the Yukon as well. So we agreed, okay, well, we'll ask for the North, and I ended up getting it. So I got my first division of choice, which was M division. Every province and territory has a letter signifying what division of the RCMP you're in. And so I was posted to M division, and I asked for Whitehorse Detachment, which is the capital city of the Yukon. And so I got my first division and my first detachment, which is pretty rare for a brand new recruit. But I was just in the right place at the right time. So we relocated from Alberta to Whitehorse, Yukon. I worked on Whitehorse Detachment, which is like, that's what we call like a police station. So I worked on Whitehorse Detachment for 4 years, and then I transferred to a small 3-member detachment 4 hours north of Whitehorse in a little community called Mayo. And I was there for 2.5 years. And then after that, so July 2013, I was offered an opportunity to transfer to Ottawa to be on our full-time emergency response team, which is like, that's the RCMP's name for a SWAT, essentially. And so I jumped on that opportunity because at the time there was very limited places in Canada where you could do that job full-time. So I had got on the emergency response team based out of Whitehorse prior to that, but that was like a part-time duty that you did on top of like your general duties. So I was like my entire time almost in the Yukon was like uniformed police officer, like a state trooper. And then I did the emergency response team on top of that. And so when I had that opportunity to go to Ottawa to do it full time, I already knew like, yeah, I really enjoyed the physicality of that type of work, that you're outside most of the time. You know, it's very hands-on, as opposed to like hours and hours and hours at your desk as an investigator. So I spent the last 8 years working on the emergency response team based out of Ottawa. My primary role was as a sniper observer. So you get trained as like a assaulter or operator. Different agencies have different terms for it. And then you go into various specialties after that, you know, rappel, marine, sniper, etc. And I focused my time on sniper. So that's what I did full time for the last 8 years. And because we're in the National Capital Region, we kind of see, and the RCMP is kind of unique in, like, if you were to compare it to American law enforcement. So we do almost everything that like the US Marshals, the FBI, the
CIA?
No, not CIA. We have our own intelligence agency. So FBI, Marshals, ATF, all the big federal law enforcement agencies in the United States, the RCMP kind of wears all of those hats, except for we have our own border people, Canadian Border Services Agency. But beyond that, but even the RCMP does some of that work, right? Like, yeah, we even have programs where the RCMP accompanies United States Coast Guard vessels, and they work together, called Shiprider. So we do all the vast majority of federal law enforcement, but
So
in
service also something similar to Secret Service. You guys get
yes, sorry, that's the one. Of course, that's the one that's most applicable to me, the Secret Service.
what
I
I
knew I was
meant.
drawing a blank on that. So maybe it's because I'm trying to block it out of my mind. No, but yeah, so Secret Service is the big one that's applicable to me in the Ottawa area, because the majority of our time, the majority of my time was spent supporting protection of our Prime Minister and other heads of state, visiting dignitaries. So it's kind of ironic that now I'm the face of this Mounties for Freedom group that is opposing the exact mandate that is being imposed by our Prime Minister So, I mean, I think that probably adds a little bit to my story, is that I was so close and heavily involved in protecting him. And now I'm kicked, myself and people like me are kicked to the curb because of our personal choices, which in previous interviews, I've tried to really appeal to people's, I got a sense of humanity. It's like, I'm not doing this out of a place of selfishness, right? Like, myself and everyone in my position have made a career of putting ourselves in dangerous situations and willing to take on a tremendous amount of risk to our own personal safety in order to protect regular citizens and to protect people like the Prime Minister. And so I tried to lay out, like, well, I tried to make a real evidence-based decision. And so when I compared what I was hearing and seeing from our government and mainstream media and public health, when I compare it to like groups like the Canadian COVID Care Alliance and Dr. Rose and Dr. McCullough and like all the heavy hitters in this, I call it the counter narrative. It's like, it's not even close. Like, it's a no contest, right? Like, it's almost, I won't say impossible, but it's very difficult to get your hands as like a lay person like myself, to get my hands on like really high quality information supporting all of the COVID restrictions and the mass vaccination strategy and, the absolute suppression of early treatment protocols. And then when you compare that to what the counter narrative is offering, like, they show their work, they're putting themselves out there, they're all putting their faces, they're putting their entire professional reputation on the line, right? Being mobbed by social media trolls and, because they feel so strongly about the truth needing to get out there, right? And so, I mean, I've said multiple times, like, I'm obviously no doctor, I'm no scientist, but I was a competent investigator before I transitioned into tactical policing. And all of this information, it's not like I did any kind of magic Sherlock Holmes hyper competent investigative techniques to find it. Like, it's all available if you just take time to look for it. Mm-hmm. And I was consistently finding that the counter narrative is far more convincing and credible in what they're saying as compared to the official narrative, and because, I mean, as an investigator, it's not just the information that's provided, it's also the manner in which it's provided. So like, I'll just sum up by saying, like, the official narrative behave like bullies, right? Like adult bullies. And I've come across many of those in my policing career, as opposed to the counter narrative are all like very, they're not fringe, they're highly credentialed people who've made science and medicine their life. And they're very reasonable and articulate about their evidence, and they're willing to share that with the world. Whereas, like, it's very minimal as to what I could find in support of what we're doing. And so that was the message I was trying to get to people, is like, look, I am a trained investigator and I was competent at my job. And I'm telling you, something's not adding up here, right? Like, you got this one side that is providing high quality, detailed information that you can actually see it playing out, like their predictions, like Dr. Garrett Vandenbosch, like, he was predicting early on that we were going to see immune escape, right, of variants. And I mean, I'm not the scientist, but it certainly seems that we're seeing that. I mean, Dr. Rosa, do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, there's a big kind of debate going on, which is a whole other show, between, and I honestly, I don't know what's going on, but I know about evolutionary dynamics and biology. Mm-hmm. And if you exert additional pressure on a virus or a bacteria in the form of drugs or injections like we're doing, you're going to drive the emergence of different versions of that pathogen. That's how it works. So that's what you're saying. But here, the thing is, it's like, it's still, I'm still not sure if what we're seeing is that. I'm not saying that it's not happening. It could very well be that Delta was an emergent variant, not a variant of concern, but just a variant because of the immune pressure exerted from these injections. I'm not saying anything about this Omicron thing because I don't know what to say about that. I mean, it just seems like I and a lot of other people predicted that they were going to try and shut down Christmas because, you know, they need to lock everyone up. They need to get everyone injected for some weird reason. I can't, I don't know. I'm not speculating why. It's very, very clear that that's their motive. And so how are they going to achieve that? A new deadly variant. And it's like, I don't know. And this is just part of the part that doesn't add up for me. And so there is this thing that exists, the escape mutants, but there's also this weird, you know, coincidental emergence of these Greek lettered variants from places that don't have a problem. Like if I was going to be a variant of concern, I would not come from South Africa. I would come from Israel or Gibraltar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, that's
Have you heard about that? Let me see. I just looked it up real quick. This is what sucks too, is that before we could talk about something and you could just Google it and find the article you're referring to. Now it's like you have to be a private investigator to find information because it just disappears from the face of the earth.
It's getting harder. I've noticed that as I'm like going through my research. It's
this popped up. I started seeing this recently, started popping up a day or two ago about the former vice president of WHO talking about quarantining the vaccinated because or risk serious illness. That's, you know, that, I mean, to come from somebody who was a vice president of the WHO, that's interesting. And it's but that there's a lot of weird shit going on right now with sports. I mean, I'm a big soccer fan.
yeah,
And a big basketball fan. There's basketball players. There's one Hawk player, young guy who got vaccinated, had a adverse reaction, and now can't pass whatever physical criteria is necessary for him to play again. He might never be able to play again. And then he talked about it on, I think he's a big gamer, and he might have been doing a gaming stream, and he was streaming and he talked about it, and he talked about how the Hawks don't even want him to talk about his issue and any of this. There's also lots of soccer players that have been passing out. Sergio Aguero, who's kind of one of the bigger names that passed out. I know Christian Eriksen for Denmark during the European game when he was playing for Denmark. I forget who they're playing it against, but he passed out in the middle of the game. And then there's all that speculation about if he was vaccinated or not. And I don't like to speculate or jump on, because even though I believe something, I don't want to jump to conclusions. So I'm like, if we don't know for sure if he was vaccinated or not, I'm like, that's not a concrete story. But what we do know is that there's tons of vaccinated athletes, and all of a sudden it seems like I would probably hear about this. You know, we would have seen this in the past. There's tons of athletes passing out during games, tons of athletes who don't feel right, having heart issues. Recently, a lot of fans too, during a Tottenham game, they stopped it because a fan passed out, was having a heart issue. And then just a day ago, Chelsea was playing, similar thing. They postponed the game because somebody was having a heart attack. And this is the UK, where it's a very vaccinated country. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to believe that there's some link there. You know, it's scary. It's scary because now it's like, you know, it's starting, you know, and they're pushing the booster shot locally at a local high school here, that they have a vax bus where they're helping kids get their booster shots or getting their first shot.
Oh, it's so stocky. Ugh.
It's
You
it's
know,
just
I don't think they're allowed to play unless they get injected. So I think there's a lot of evidence to support the fact that they were, although I agree with you, unless you absolutely know, you shouldn't, use conjecture. But Peter said something really relevant today in one of his interviews. He said, and I always try and think of on the human empathy level. So imagine you're a young athlete and you're professional and you are having chest pain or you've been diagnosed with myocarditis and your doctor, your sports doctor says, or it's known in your community that if you succumb to that, you won't be able to play for this amount of time because your doctor said you can't because you might suffer a heart attack. So if they know that, they might just say, I'm not going to report my chest pain when I have it. I don't want to stop playing. So they ignore it, or it's not even that they're ignoring it. They're choosing because they don't want to stop playing because of all these weird coercions and threats, and then they end up dropping like flies. Like that's what Peter pointed out today. And it makes a lot of sense to me. It's like, wow, I don't know. I think it's all related to the injections, by the way.
Well, we're hearing about people that were, for the most part, to my knowledge, like quite healthy beforehand and instantly, and well, not instantly necessarily, but shortly after receiving first or second dose. In some of the personal examples I'm aware of, like major issues. Like, so I know of at least five members that have shared either in our chat group or to me personally, vaccine injury stories regarding, like, they felt like if it was earlier on in the year, they were doing it because they were under the impression that they had to do it. It was part of their kind of like their civic duty to society, or they were going to become mandatory later on. And then they suffered serious adverse reactions afterwards, predominantly like either myocarditis or pericarditis. Another guy just recently was having all kinds of issues with like seizing joints. He's still not exactly certain what his official diagnosis is, but I think he just got his first dose on November 22nd, and then ended up going to the hospital yesterday, I think.
How old is he?
You know what? I'm not 100% sure. I would guess probably mid 30s to mid 40s. But I have someone very close to me that suffered an adverse effect back in June, and I confirmed with him today that he's fine with me sharing his story. So it's my older brother. My older brother is a member of the RCMP, and actually I have a big history of the RCMP in my family. My dad was a member. My oldest brother Sean was a member. He just recently left the force and moved out of country with his family. And then my other brother Ryan, he was in the RCMP a couple of years before me, and me and him are very close. And he took the double dose of Pfizer back in June of this year, and he suffered 3 weeks of pretty intense, like he said, intense chest pain. Felt like someone was stabbing him in the heart. Like anytime he did anything physically active, I pushed him to go to his doctor and kind of like push the doctor to treat him. When he went to his physician told him, it should be fine, should resolve itself. It's nothing. I'm not worried about it. Essentially, I don't know if those were the doctor's exact words, but that was what my brother relayed to me. And like no treatment plan, nothing, not even no diagnosis.
Any question about whether or not he was injected?
Right. Like I pushed Ryan to go talk to him and say, like, this is what happened after the vaccination.
Right.
And the doctor very much like kind of like sloughed him off and ended up, I think he ended up walking away from that with a prescription to help him sleep through the night.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That is
he-
so, like, this is the irresponsibility of doctors that I can't handle. Like, just denying and then shooing away their patients. Like, anyway, sorry, continue.
No,
It's really
and so
irritating.
the heart pain subsided for a while, and but he's got like a chronic issue in his left elbow that wasn't there before. He's not exactly sure what that's about, but he just recently told me a couple days ago, and just today when he gave me confirmation that I could share his story, that the heart pain is starting to come back. Like it sounds like periodically. So I told him, like, please, like, just don't exert yourself too much and go get demand some kind of diagnosis and demand some kind of treatment. So that's, those stories are a big part of my story as to why I've chosen my path and to why I want to speak out about this. Because if that's constantly hidden and no one is speaking out, like from the injured side or from the treating physician side, like, then people think that this is no big deal. But even if you just look at the Public Health Canada website and you search up their adverse reactions, especially adverse events of special interest that they're monitoring, like, there's some significant conditions on there, like not just cardiac, but clotting event, like thrombosis related events, but even like central nervous system issues. So like, you don't hear any of that in the mainstream narrative, right? They feed you the line about, like, the typical symptoms, a little bit of a fever, maybe some pain at the injection site, some redness and some swelling. It's like, sudden heart failure is something people need to know about. Possible issues with your central nervous system or your spinal cord, like what do they call it, transverse myelitis, like those are major issues, like, that people need to know about if they're going to make an informed choice. Like, I don't think informed consent has even come close to being accomplished with the messaging, right? Like, it's certainly not, you have to go looking for it to find that. Whereas, you're starting to see more information come out about the heart issues, thanks to people like Dr. Rose, people that are like, it's almost becoming overwhelming for them to censor anymore. And it's just, that was why I was trying to get that message out to people. It's like, look, the unvaccinated in Canada, we're not a bunch of selfish people who only care about ourselves and don't care about everybody else. It is that there are legitimate concerns about the safety, legitimate concerns about the efficacy, and the complete suppression of the medical and scientific community that is trying to say, hey, we need to pay attention to what's going on here. Like, this is not these are not working the way that they were marketed. These are not as safe as they were marketed. And, we don't know what the long-term repercussions will be.
It's crazy how in your face everything is too. It's like, they don't even have to try to hide the fact that first of all, they're not vaccines. And now that like, there's this video of this British politician guy who's getting his advice from this advisory board who the chair is, making a vaccine. I mean, the conflict of interest is so severe. Anyway, so he's spouting that there's this very long list of things. I wrote a Substack article on it today, but one of them was that they're going to decrease the time interval between the boosters to 3 months. It's like, it's not a booster. This is not a vaccine. Those are not boosters. You're talking about something completely
You guys froze. Are you
Me as well?
no, not you, just Rose.
Okay.
Jessica? I was wondering if it was like, are we standing really still or did we also freeze?
I was just trying to be patient for the system to correct itself.
Yeah. I'm sure she's picked up on it. Yeah, another thing, and we'll wait till she comes back. Maybe I'll write her a message. But another thing is the 14-day thing. So you're hearing reports in the US that they're not considering you fully vaccinated until 14 days later. So what's happening is that if anybody has a adverse reaction within those 14 days, they're not considering it a vaccine adverse reaction. You're back, Jessica. Actually, maybe you can confirm this because
They don't like me talking today. That's the second time.
really?
Sure.
Have you heard about how there could be a issue with so they don't consider you fully vaccinated until 14 days after getting the vaccine. So if a adverse reaction or death happens within those 14 days.
Guess what they call them?
Bad luck? I don't know.
No, they call them unvaccinated.
Exactly. Yeah. So I wanted to confirm that because I keep hearing that being
True.
but it's true. Yeah.
We're publishing a paper, me and a group from the UK today. We're going to submit it on exactly this. There's this huge bump in the what do you call it? The overall mortality in the UK data set in the unvaccinated group, and you don't see it in the other ones. And it's like, what? This doesn't even make sense from like any point of view, let alone all cause mortality. So it's like, we have an idea, which I believe in firmly, because I was saying this like ages ago, that they're dumping all the first dose deaths into the unvaccinated group just by wordplay. Well, you're not vaccinated until 14. Like, come on. Are you joking? The minute that thing goes in your arm, you are, injected. You will be, all the things that are going to unfold after that have started to unfold. The immune response will ensue, the inflammation will ensue, the hyperinflammation will ensue, your adverse events will ensue, and it is the result of that injection. So it's like, you can't call them uninjected at that point.
So if I may ask another question, I have said publicly many times, like, even with the safety concerns, if I was convinced that these worked to absolutely prevent transmission and therefore could stop people from becoming ill, like if I truly believed that me taking it would prevent me from being a potential threat to people, I likely would have taken it. I mean, because that's my job, right? That's what I do. I'm willing to put myself at risk for others. But so it seems to me that the vast majority of the evidence I've seen is confirming that they do not prevent transmission. And so, and I've seen the director of the CDC say that publicly. I've seen Dr. Fauci admit that it does not prevent infection. I don't recall if he said transmission, but he said the goal was to prevent clinical disease. But the Minister of Health from Israel on like an FDA Zoom call, it was like a video montage that I think I saw from Robert Malone. And so there was the Israeli, it wasn't the minister in the UK, I don't think, but it was like someone in the United Kingdom Health Services admitting the same thing, CDC director, Dr. Fauci, and then even ending off with the CEO of Moderna admitting that they don't prevent transmission. And it's the goal is to prevent clinical disease. Can you confirm that? Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. That's what I was convinced of already, but it's just, for anyone who has criticized me for trying to play scientist, it's like, no, I'm not trying to play scientist, but I've been listening to many scientists and I've been speaking to scientists and physicians, and this is what I'm hearing, right? Like, this is overwhelmingly the message is like, they don't prevent infection, they don't prevent transmission. Therefore, why are we forcing it on everyone and making everyone take it in order to save their job, in order to have the ability to participate in society. As you know, like, I mean, the two things that they're doing in Canada right now that I think have the biggest impact on people submitting to the coercion is you can't be involved in your children's activities, and you're losing your job, right? So like, every year that my children have been in minor hockey, I've volunteered either on the bench or as on ice as a coach. You know, my wife and I both have. Not even allowed in the arena right now because I'm deemed too dangerous to the population. I'm losing my job with the RCMP, even though I've given 15 hardworking years to the RCMP trying to be the best police officer I could be, and now I'm not good enough anymore. So like, it's just nice to get that validation out there from people. Like, it's not just me saying this, right? It's experts, like scientific medical experts that are saying this.
Well, none of any logical. You don't need to be a scientist. You just have to have critical thinking skills. I mean, think about it. In United States, they were selling you, and they openly talked about this. That's why it didn't even make any sense. I'm like, they're openly telling you the vaccine is basically designed to stop hospitalizations. And the pharmaceutical companies aren't even the ones telling you that it spreads it. It's the media, it's everybody else who isn't, making the product, who really, I guess maybe because they wouldn't be liable for spreading misinformation. They're the ones kind of hinting at, get the vaccine so you can save grandma, get the vaccine. It's like, none of that makes any sense, because nobody, the pharmaceutical companies themselves they've never alleged that it stops you from getting it or spreading it. So it doesn't make any sense that, one, you don't have to wear a mask, because the whole point of the mask is, if I'm sick, I don't get you sick. So, but if I get vaccinated, I don't have to wear a mask. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And this whole narrative that they keep using, that you're helping grandmother or you're helping others, or it's selfish. It's unselfish if you get vaccinated because you're protecting people around you. It's complete nonsense. And none of it makes any logical sense. That's why you took somebody like Joe Rogan, who, much like us, I'm sure I see kettlebells in the back, so I'm sure you're a health nut like the rest of
that's how I stay. That's how I work on my immunity.
Exactly.
Or one of my strategies.
Well, what drives me nuts is that and Jessica and I have talked about this, like, what makes her such a unique perspective on all this is that I'm
a surfer.
but you move, you exercise, you're into nutrition, you're into exercising, you're into, you actually put into practice the things you preach. And anybody who's into exercising or sports or whatever, any sport whatsoever, you're always learning about your body, because you're trying to figure out, like, how do I recover faster? How do I get stronger? How do I get better at this?
And when you get older, it's like literally moment by moment. Like, you really have to pay attention when you get older. Like, I went surfing today, and wow, it's been months. My whole everything changes when I get back in the water and take some waves. It's like, wow. Sorry, I just wanted to express my joy.
Surfing is amazing.
Oh my God, it's the only thing I would do if I had a choice. Like, seriously, it's the best. But can I say something about the thing we were talking about with the efficacy? So first thing I want to say is, anyone who doubts what you're saying can just check out any study. Well, I don't know if that's possible because it's all junk now. So I'll give you the firsthand information. When the Delta variant came or originated, I don't know what happened in Israel, most of the people who were infected by it were the injected people. They had become susceptible, which means, by definition, that product that they'd been injected with was not providing protective immunity, which means it's failed. And everybody doesn't know is that these things that they're putting into you continually, booster, it's the same crap. It's the exact same thing. So please tell me, whoever is promoting this, how is it going to be possible to gain protective immunity against emerging variants from an original batch? It's not possible. It's garbage. The whole thing is a lie. I'll just come out and say that it's a lie.
Well, that's certainly how it seems. Yeah.
Yeah, the coronavirus itself is very mutable, which means it changes a lot. It's like a cold virus or the flu virus. It's called antigenic drift. You know, that's why we have seasonal sicknesses, because they change their coats and then they become a little bit less visible to our immune system. So they trigger an immune response periodically. So anything that's considered a mutable, a highly changey virus is notoriously difficult to produce a vaccine against. That's why after decades of trying to do this, we've never succeeded, because it's pretty much impossible to do. So now all of a sudden they're trying to convince us that they have. But the thing is, it's like, okay, so that's a big question mark. Really? I have to ask them, really? You came up with a product that you're calling a vaccine that is 100% or 90 whatever percent efficacious at providing protective immunity, et cetera? I don't buy it. Also, these, you know, for those of the people who are listening who still don't know, these aren't vaccines. It's something completely different. This is mRNA, messenger RNA, packaged in a lipid nanoparticle bubble. Another brand new thing we've never injected into our bodies before. And so, I mean, it's like you said, even if these products were highly efficacious, even if they were pretty good at stopping transmission, even if they did provide protective immunity, even if they did, maybe not guarantee, but help with disease course to provide, less severe symptoms if you get it, there's still no safety data, as is being reflected in all the adverse event collection systems across the world. I mean, there are two branches we always need to talk about here, and it's, we're touching on it now. There's this efficacy. It's not. This is a failed vaccine by any virologist, vaccinologist, immunologist definition. This is a failed product in the context of what it's meant to do. And then there's safety. I mean, everyone, I assume, is afraid of getting COVID. And, maybe it is a very scary thing for some people, but what we should have been doing from the very beginning is honing in on our vulnerable populations. Like I said, a year and a half ago in a video I made, putting them up on a pedestal and protecting them, not isolating them and marginalizing them until they just die alone. No. So anyway, sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there, but not efficacious, not safe.
So essentially all these mandates make zero sense.
Zero.
Right? And I mean, that's the feeling I've had for months, but it's just awesome to hear someone like yourself come right out and say it.
We're not going to inject our way out of this. All that we're going to do is what YERT is predicting that's going to happen. And we're going to cause more people to die from suicides, from adverse events, it's going to be a catastrophe when this gets into all the kids. It's not if, it's when.
Well, the scary part is, and I've been saying this since the beginning,
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring it all down again.
No, it's hard. It's hard to be optimistic when we're talking about such a horrendous situation. But one thing I kept saying is, and I would tell people, and I'm like, I'm not here to talk you out of getting vaccinated. If you want to, go ahead. But I will tell you that even with the bullshit numbers, which, I've had Dr. Scott Jensen on and many others who can just show you examples of how the numbers have been inflated. And even with the bullshit numbers, it seems like if you're a healthy decent person, who's a little bit critical about what you eat or whatever, you're probably pretty safe. And what's scary about the vaccine, and I've been saying this since the beginning, what's scary about the vaccine is it doesn't matter how healthy you are. It can harm anybody. But
That's right.
but COVID is only really dangerous to people who are unhealthy. So how confident are you in your health? If you're a healthy person, I would rather take my chances with the virus than I would with the vaccine.
Mhm.
But you don't get to decide. The government gets to decide.
I mean, the thing that still drives me nuts is like we talked about this vaccine bus that's going around in schools, or like the fact that like our local schools are saying that, the goal is to get 80% of the school, everybody in the schools, students and personnel, all vaccinated. And it's like, you're protecting them from what? It's not even a threat to them. And it just, and the parents that think that people like myself who don't want to vaccinate my kids and don't want to put masks on them and or whatever, that I'm the animal and I'm and it's like you're not looking at information. You're having a emotional response, and I'm emotional too, because I'm upset that you're willing to put your kids in danger. I mean, that you're willing. I was just in Florida, which explains my tan, and and I was just in Florida, and I think it wasn't on the plane, maybe it was at the airport, a whole family double masked, 4 people double masked, and I'm just like, what the like, I just can't even. I'm like, you were literally restricting your body of oxygen to protect yourselves from what? Like, this is crazy. It's
so weird, isn't it?
And it makes you wonder how much of it is like, and I keep saying this, like how much of it is that the big pharma propaganda worked. If the goal was to scare people to the point where they will do anything to protect themselves, I mean, it worked. It's like, I almost feel bad for them, because I'm like, listen, if they don't know that podcasts exist, they don't know that Odyssey, Rockfin, BitChute exists, if they do not know of any of these other alternative resources for information exists, and they've had mainstream media on for 2 years, if that was me, I'd probably be doing the same thing, because I'd be so petrified.
I have 2 things that I want to get out there before I forget. So regarding the I'm going to call it propaganda that we're seeing from the media and from the official narrative, like the do your part, right? I keep hearing that. Well, I did it to do my part, or you got to do your part. And so I wanted to know from Dr. Rose, like, when you're getting this, or if you're having your children take this, like, what are you actually doing? Like, as far as people are still under the impression that it's like, oh, we got to do this to protect others, we got to do this because it's our civic duty. And you see this, like, oh, the superheroes, the child superheroes, and they have pictures taken with people in superhero costumes as they're getting their superhero vaccination certificate. And you're seeing it on social media. And like, I guess the reason that makes me upset is because it's like, well, so then you by process of elimination, you look at me as if I'm not doing my part, as if I'm the bad person, as if me and my family, because we've made an informed decision, we are the wrongdoers. And like, I don't want to create more animosity, but I want people to understand the impact that they're having when they're talking about, like, well, we're doing our part. And it's like,
what am I doing?
If you look at those back there, and the fact that we live an active, healthy lifestyle, and we're supplementing with all the nutraceuticals as suggested by, people who are successfully treating COVID-19 patients, like, we are doing our part. We're doing our part every day to try not to overwhelm the medical system, to stay healthy, to make ourselves more resilient. And it just bothers me that that's how we and people in our position feel when we're constantly bombarded by this, like, well, you got to do your part. It's like, if you're still beating that drum, you are 6 months behind. on the
Yes.
information, even from public health officials, right?
Yes.
Even from the public health officials that are still pushing this mass vaccination strategy.
Yeah, there's no doubt. You're absolutely right. It is all like I think it's more than half a year lagged. Like all the information and you know it's like there's a lot of conspiratorial vibes going around right now, but sometimes I really get these twangs when I'm doing the data part, because data isn't, you know, biased and stuff. That this, most of this is propagating. I'm not saying created, I'm saying propagating because of, I don't know what the word is. Is it stupidity? Is it ignorance? I don't know, but because of innocence, even maybe is the word. All of the leaders that I like, anybody who's told me what the leaders know, like firsthand, has said the same thing. They don't know what's going on. They don't know that there are adverse event data collection systems. They don't know that people are suffering adverse. I don't understand how anyone can't know that, but you know, if somebody in the Israeli Knesset, for example, on video, which is timestamped, comes out and says he wasn't aware that there was a vaccine adverse event collection system in the States and that anyone was succumbing, then that's like really horrendously alarming, because this person is involved in making all the decisions for all the people in the country. It's like you don't even know the very basics. So I don't know if it's, you know, I know how it was created. It's the bubble. It's the protective, you know, propaganda, legacy media bubble. I get it. But it's like, there's also this thing in the, I don't know, man, it's so complex, this whole thing, and everything is intertwined. And at the same time, everything is independent, and it's, yeah, it's a big mess. But to add to your point, this has been a sore spot for me for over a year and a half now. Like we've had this stupid green pass crap going on for like almost 2 years. I've been ousted from society for longer than I can, you know, I haven't had a glass of wine in a restaurant for almost 2 years, which is like one of my favorite things to do. You know, they've done some seriously messed up crap here, and they're still doing it. And they're forcing people to undergo these ridiculous fake PCR things if you're not injected to do anything. And that includes going into a government building to renew your driver's license or something, which is something you have to do. So it's literally forced. But what I've been really unappreciative about as a human being is the way everyone bent over so fast and didn't even consider what was going to happen to everyone else. Like I think it's about a quarter of the population, most of that is kids here, are still not injected. And we, you know, I haven't personally been demonized here. I haven't had that experience yet, mainly because I don't interact with people. But I feel it every moment of every day. It's like I am a reject of society because of what you did. And one day, we're all going to find out the truth. Not just you, not just me, not just you. We're all going to know the truth. And I don't care for Itology South. I'm not that person. No. I don't care that I'm right. I really don't. But the sad part is, it's like, I've never been aggressive in my stance. I try not to, you know, make people feel bad either way for whatever decisions they made. But it's like, how come you're not doing that for me? Like, how come you're not considering me? Because right now I'm spending literally every waking and sleeping moment trying to save you from yourself. And myself, of course. But it's like, yeah, it's like, so to answer your question, what are we doing? This is what we're doing. And you should all be grateful, because we're not hurting you. But one day you're going to realize how important we are, and everyone is, who's just doing their own research and speaking up no matter what it costs them. It's like, that's what we're doing. Booyah.
Well, I know, like, I mean, beyond my career loss, which it's a bit of a pill to swallow, but I can move on from that. I can reinvent myself professionally. But like the impact that it's having on some of the relationships that we had with people that we were quite close with before, and now it's like they haven't openly criticized us, but they've completely shut down communication. And like we've definitely have had relationships damaged over our stance on this. And when I've tried to explain my position, I kind of get the standard, well, oh, you know, well, I don't agree with you, which, okay, you don't have to agree with me, but can you at least see where we're coming from instead of just cutting off ties with us completely? That's been hard to take a little bit. Now on the plus side of that, though, I would say for every relationship we've lost, we've gained many more, right? Like
better ones.
especially since I've been publicly speaking out, like the flood of support that I've had has been like overwhelming, and like from not just from RCMP officers, but from people all across Canada, and even some people in different parts of the world that like have we have connected with at some point in our life. So yeah, you know, I guess you always have to sacrifice something when you're moving ahead with something new. And I guess like you kind of have to let go of things that aren't serving you. And that's how I feel about the RCMP. Now, on the positive side of things, I saw something this morning that makes me feel a little bit hopeful that even the mainstream media may be starting to pivot even just a little bit. So like in Canada, we have the Canadian version of the BBC. And so it's the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Oh, I know them.
Okay, yeah. Well, so do I. But I saw an opinion piece that was actually published from a privacy lawyer based out of Toronto by the name of Alan Richards. His last name, and it's like Richard, but with a Z instead of a D. And it was like, it hit the nail right on the head of everything that I have been talking about and seeing over this last, since early 2020. Really early 2021 for me was when I really started to dig into the counter narrative. But so the fact that the CBC was even willing to publish that instead of like completely censor it, that to me is a positive sign that maybe even the mainstream media is starting to see what's happening all over the world, especially in countries that are highly vaccinated, and thinking like, we've been complicit in this entire time. Maybe it's time to start trying to save a little bit of face.
Exactly.
Like that's what I'm hoping for, is that, because I mean, they obviously have a tremendous amount of influence still with people who are only listening to the official narrative. And I think that's ultimately what this is going to take, is enough of the population to just say, okay, this isn't working. We can't keep beating this drum and following this same path. Like otherwise, we're just going to repeat all the mistakes that are, well, we're just going to repeat the same path that has already been laid by Israel and Gibraltar and Singapore and places that were ahead of us in the schedule. So that was a little ray of sunshine for me this morning, being like, oh my God, if even the CBC is willing to print this publicly, like that's a good sign. So apologies, but just before it escapes my mind, I'd like to go back one step about like the efficacy, just, or the doing your part. And I know that mindset that is still, people still have, like, I think that's why everyone's still masked, right? Like in Canada, even if you're vaccinated, you still have to wear a mask unless you have an exemption. So that's why everyone's still masking. That's why everyone is just going along with the vaccine passports and disclosing their private medical information to people that have no legal authority to ask it of you. That's why everyone is so compliant, because they feel like, well, that's what we have to do to protect everybody else. In your opinion, or in your expert experience, will we get to herd immunity? Because that's another thing I keep hearing from people, like, oh, well, we got to get to herd immunity. We got to get to herd. Okay, that was, you're confirming what I believed already, but it's like, well,
No.
I thought we had to get to, the messaging was 70% vaccination of the eligible population. And now we're in Ontario, I think we're close to 90. Like last time I saw it, I think it was like 88.7%, and still no change, right?
Your
Like
children, no.
some people still have a little bit of, vaccinated people that have their vaccine passport. They're still able to participate in more activities than I am, but they're still heavily restricted, right? Like, so herd immunity, that argument is not working. And then asymptomatic. What does that mean to you? Because I've had other scientists tell me that what that means is that you're healthy, that your immune system's working and you're healthy and you're not contagious.
Yep.
And so therefore, masking a healthy human being makes zero sense.
Is actually deleterious. So of course, that's what it means. Children, for example, are, and I hate the phrase asymptomatic carrier. Children generally have asymptomatic infection, but don't go through disease course because of the nature and the power of their immune response. They have very potent innate responses, NK cells, and the antibodies that are produced and that you have from birth that are pre-primed. They're not antigen stimulated. It's a different subset of antibodies that are very, very like copious and powerful. And so what they do and how they function is to prevent the virus from taking hold. So you prevent the replication, the infection of the cells and the replication that gets out of control. And then this immune response that is mounted in the case where the viral load gets too high. So yeah, if you're asymptomatic, and A is the prefix that means you don't have symptoms, then you're not shedding virus if you're talking about a viral pathogen. What people seem to have forgotten, and I'm getting a little bit mad again because I can't believe this stuff. It's like, come on, people, go back to when you were 5, when you were playing in the mud and da-da-da-da. If you're sneezing and coughing and you feel crappy, that means you're probably full-fledged in the infection/disease phase of say a viral infection. Everybody knows that when you're sick, you're supposed to stay home. When you're a little kid and you're like, I don't feel good, then your mom would keep you out of school. A, because you feel like shit, and B, because you're contagious and you don't want to get everyone else sick. When did we forget this basic stuff? If you have a cold or the flu or COVID, you stay away from other people. Duh. That's common decency. That's how we've always done things. Because you are symptomatic and you're shedding virus. So like, I don't get that part. I've never understood why people who are sick go to work anyway. It really annoys me. It happens a lot, when I used to go to work here. I don't get that part. I'm like, slap you figuratively and say, get the hell home. Like you're going to make us all sick. Not that I really believe that either, but like anyway, we don't have to go there. But yeah, you that whole thing was another like either innocence because people didn't really know at that point and they just started using the terminology like super spreader, asymptomatic super spreader. I'm like, what the hell is that? So I don't know. I think that might all be part of the story. But what was the other thing that you said? I wanted to. I have
the herd immunity.
Right. Yeah.
That's another one of these catchphrases that everyone just keeps saying, well, we got to do it to get to herd immunity. We got to get to do it to get to herd
Yes.
immunity. And I'm like, well, at what percentage of vaccination coverage do we declare herd immunity? Because that's what they have been using as their messaging to try and prompt people all along, right? And
Yeah.
I think the initial number was like 70% in Ontario, and
Mm.
then it just the goalpost keeps getting pushed closer to 100%, which we know we're never going to get to 100%.
Because it's
Not unless it becomes like
impossible
literally forced.
in a biological system. So listen, guys, herd immunity is a thing. It's a real thing. It's a very potent thing. It's how populations become what's the word? Not globally. Yeah, sure. Globally immune to a pathogen. You know, a certain percentage of people gets infected, mounts a response, and the thing isn't passed between people anymore, because once you are immune, you don't pass it on to another person. So it's like the tipping point percentage of a population. It varies between pathogens. You know, that many people or that percentage of the population needs to go through this in order for it to go away. You know, it just burns itself out. I said almost 2 years ago, I don't know how anyway, I predicted a long time ago that what we should do with this coronavirus is let it burn through the population. And I was basing that on two things. One, because it's coronavirus, even if it's a novel version, you know, we have cross immunity. We're going to be fine. Number two, I had a theory that this thing had been circulating for months around the globe before anyone ever found out about it or isolated it, or if they did, or sequenced it. Because think about the air traffic in and out of China.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're talking about millions and millions and millions of flights. And patient zero, I mean, did we even identify them? You know, they say that they did, but I don't know. So I kind of had a feeling that this thing had burned through even before all this crap started a large percentage of the population, which means that a large percentage of the human population had either cross-reactive immunity, or they already had immunity from this particular coronavirus. So, and now kids, I guarantee if we had left this alone, we would definitely have just reached herd immunity a long time ago, and nothing would have happened. I mean, and the worst part is, and this is part of this presentation I'm giving regularly now, it's PowerPoint presentation. When we start putting this crap into kids, all of our kids who are the buffer zone between us and the virus, we are going to destroy, really and truly destroy the opportunity to create real herd immunity. We've been putting this shit into people for almost a year now. We've tipped the scales. This is what Geert is talking about. We're messing everything up. And it all kind of comes back to a very commonsensical thing, like, don't mess with Mother Nature. She doesn't care about us. And if we really get this wrong in the kind of way that it could go wrong, we are all going to be in a really bad way. I know that that's a bit of a doomsayer thing, but I know that, you know, this is what I study. And so you have to look at eventualities. It's a possibility that we're really screwing ourselves right now, really. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So is there potential for these injections to interfere with the innate immune system, like to interfere with they're
undermining
okay.
it. Absolutely, they're undermining it. Okay, so listen, instead of a virus, like the way that you usually succumb to this kind of pathogen, the flu and a cold and the coronavirus is through the nasal passage, the airways, right? STDs are transmitted through other means, and other viruses are transferred through needles. So these they go up through your nose. So we have a very potent type of immunity called mucosal immunity, mucus, you know? So the reason why you get You get boogers in your nose because basically it's your nose's way, your immune system like clumping up stuff and preventing it from going down into your own lungs. So we have these immune mediators called interleukins, and we have all sorts of cell types that are lodged here in copious quantities, especially in kids, because kids roll around in the mud and stuff. And so the interaction with the pathogen and the immune system it's designed, we've been co-evolving with these things for a long time to happen in a certain way so as to promote non-disease course. You get exposed, you mount a response. If your immune system is optimized and everything's working the way that it should, and you're not already inflamed or hyperinflamed, then you probably won't get sick, even if you encounter the flu virus that's going around. This is going to vary, of course. What you're doing when you inject something directly into your muscle, because most people get an intramuscular injection with these things, is you're mainlining this weird ass spike protein template and the lipid nanoparticle directly into your muscle cells, which causes damage, which is why you get a lot of injection site stuff going on. That's the normal disturbance of those cells. But there are two problems here. It doesn't stay at the injection site, first of all. The lipid nanoparticles are trafficked all over the body, which they either didn't know before, and we found out, or they did know because they're evil and they didn't tell anyone. So now that we know that this happens, and one of the highest accumulation places are the ovaries and the adrenals, that's a pretty important gland there. And we have to assume, because that's the purpose of these things, that the spike protein is being mass manufactured by our own cells in those locations, then the immune system immediately, because of the copious amounts of this foreign protein, goes into like full-on commando mode. So your acquired system kicks in. That's the T cells and the B cells, the specific immunity. And this is what it's supposed to do by design. You get spike protein specific CD4 positive, CD8 positive T cells, B cells, and antibodies that are very lock and keyed into those specific epitopes. So you completely bypass this part of the immune system that is highly potent. And that you end up generating a very broad spectrum and long-lasting type of immunity when you go that route. So you're undermining the design of the human body. And let's go back one step more. Any vaccine, I'm not talking about these things, I'm talking about like real vaccines, like attenuated pathogens or like live attenuated pathogens. These are like the full structure of, say, a virus or whatever you're talking about, which is a massive amount of different kinds of proteins with different, what we call epitopes, which are little strings of amino acids that we can recognize if we're an immune mediator. So you get a response that's not targeted to one specific protein with a limited number of epitopes. You're getting this really broad response to all of these proteins with so many different epitopes, so that when you encounter the wild type pathogen or another version even of the pathogen in real life, you're protected most likely because you have all of these different kinds of recognizers ready to go, and they last forever in most cases. So that was a long answer, but you're completely undermining the natural, the way that Mother Nature designed this to work through coevolution, not just evolution.
Well, do you know who Dr. Zach Bush is?
I've heard the name. Yeah.
Okay, well, I've listened to him on a number of topics, and he talks about how like we can't genetically modify our way out of this. And so that's kind of what it sounds like when you explain that. That's kind of where my that kicked in, that memory of him saying that, because I was listening to that earlier in the summer. I was listening to a podcast of his, possibly on London Real, and it was about like don't fear the virus, and how it's a natural part of evolution. Like the virome updates the human genome like throughout the course of evolution, which was fascinating. I mean, obviously that's not my wheelhouse, but when you were giving your answer just now, that kind of clicked into my memory bank of him saying that. Okay, sorry, Ricky. That's most of my questions for now.
All right, people are used to hearing me rant, so it's nice to for people to hear other voices. But yeah, all this is to me, it's almost common sense, right? I mean, that's the thing that's like the most frustrating, is something like Jessica said, why are you masking healthy people? It doesn't make any sense. If you're asymptomatic, it means that you're basically healthy. And I think we were joking about this last time she was on the show, about how before 2020, if you're asymptomatic and you're going to the doctor trying to tell your doctor that you're sick but you have no symptoms, he tell you to go home. Like, what do you mean? Like, well,
go home, crazy person.
Yeah. And those people do exist. I have friends of mine that work at ERs and hospitals, and they talk about the people who go in who swear something's wrong but they can't find anything. And so those people do exist, and that's a part of it too that people have to think about. I mean, just the anxiety of and concern about getting this specific virus, it can cause you to probably get sick or feel.
Yeah. That's what we were talking about before. Fear is the immune system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you look, the placebo effect, obviously if you think you're getting better, you can actually get better and feel better. What is it they call it? The nocebo effect, where it's just like the opposite will happen, where you think you're having anxiety, and or you think that you're getting sick and you have this anxiety, and leads you to actually physically get sick. I mean, that's why stress, they say, can lead you to getting sick or whatever, or not feeling good. I think I've talked about him quite a few times on the show, about the guy who wrote Mind Over Back Pain. Dr. I forget his name, but he the back surgeon who found out that these people were having severe back pain. It was coming from mental stress, and their bodies were finding a place to kind of get rid of that pain. And
wow.
Yeah, so Dr. Sandel, I think was his name, but it's the mind and body are connected, and they both have a effect on each other, and it's something that people don't consider. But as a parent, like, seeing kids masked drives me effing crazy, because
oh yeah, me too.
I mean, there's no protocols I mean, I can only speak for Massachusetts, but in Massachusetts, there's no protocols to replace a mask if a kid sneezes in it, to replace a mask if a kid drops it in the bathroom.
You're being way too logical.
I mean, so it's like, it's all, and I've said it over and over again, it's not about science, it's about compliance, because they don't care if what they're doing is helping or hurting somebody's health. They just care that you comply, because how can a kid wear this? There's no way that kids are washing their masks every night and parents are washing their masks every night. And when I drop off my kids, and
funny,
I see the same kids wearing the same masks every day,
and inside out, right?
Yeah.
It's so cringy.
It's just, if you're there to protect people's health, if it's about protecting people's health, why aren't you replacing it or giving them a new mask? Why kids get mask breaks? Kids get to take off their mask when they go to recess. You can't tell me that those masks aren't falling out of their pocket, aren't being dropped, and then you're putting it on their face. Like, so it just, so much of this, like this whole argument about, well, you're not a scientist, you're not a this, and I'm like, listen, I've been a gym rat my whole life. I mean, I rarely take a week off from the gym, probably like a handful of times throughout my life since I started going to the gym. There's a lot of people at the gym who know a lot about health and nutrition and how to keep their bodies healthy, and how to recover, and how to keep their immune system healthy, and all these things. And most of them aren't scientists or doctors. They're people who actually practice what they preach. They read, they research. The average American who's obese and watching Netflix while snacking on whatever preservatives they're snacking on.
Yeah, what's the stat now?
I mean, it drives me nuts that now all of a sudden they became health experts. Where now I'll talk to somebody. You do realize, like 2 years ago, you were coming to me for health advice, and now all of a sudden, because you've watched TV, you're watching mainstream media, and there's some doctor with a PhD telling you this and that, but that doctor is not in shape. That doctor does not practice what he preaches. It's really easy to say that, this happens if you do this and that, but talk to people who actually do it, who actually don't get sick, who stay healthy, who are in way above average health for their age, and people in their age group. So Danny, you want to jump in?
Well, just when you mentioned PhD there, like I was in and out watching episode 2 of that new documentary, COVID Revealed. It's out right now. It's brand new, and I think they're doing like one episode every night, and then you only have like 24 hours to watch it, and I think you can purchase it afterwards. But last night, the episode I was watching had Robert Kennedy Jr. was the first speaker before Peter McCullough, Dr. Peter McCullough, I should use his official title. And Robert Kennedy Jr. said something in his portion of the interview where he said the two demographics in America that are the least vaccinated are PhDs and African Americans. And I thought, like, wow, like that's what a statement that is to make. So you have like people who are extremely, African Americans who have probably I would assume a high risk of skepticism into what the government is telling them. And then you have like academics, right, who are, they're trained their whole lives to look at things with a critical eye. Like, you don't hear that in the media, right? Like they make it seem as though like the science is like irrefutable and that it is an absolute consensus. And that to me is like one of the biggest red flags about this entire global effort, right? It's like, when in history has it ever been the good guy, for lack of a better term, that crushed freedom and censored intellectuals, right? Like that, we cannot allow this to continue. And like that's another thing that you see as a recurring theme in history, is that authoritarianism comes to power because populations allow it. And I mean, like, I love when I see those videos of like, the mass protests, like especially in European countries who've lived through some of those horrible atrocities of history. It's like those people, it's not that distant for them, right? Like I'm on the other side of the ocean, but I mean, we still had people fight in those wars, obviously, but those people, their grandparents, they lived through those events, right? Like you're looking in Austria and Germany now, as I saw something in the news about Germany tabling legislation to make it compulsory vaccination for, like, I don't know everybody, but like the adult population, I believe. But but then I just saw recently too that the Austrian chancellor just stepped down. So I think hopefully that's a sign of maybe some things to come. Is like he maybe he had a moment of
I can't do this.
Yeah, like a moment of reflection where he's just like, okay, I cannot in good conscience force people to be vaccinated, right? Like it goes against, yeah, his own people, right? And I mean, like, one thing that I have never touched on in any of my interviews or speaking engagements, which is like, we've heard lots of people talk about the Nuremberg Code, and I haven't brought that up much in previous talks because I know, like, right away people get defensive and it's like, oh, you can't compare this to the Holocaust. I'm like, well, I'm not comparing this to the Holocaust, but
I think you can.
But Hitler didn't start with the Holocaust, right? But like even I have it written down right here, the Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights from 2005. And it says right in there, human dignity, rights, and fundamental freedoms are to be fully respected. The interests of and welfare of the individual should have priority over the sole interest of science and society. Like that's what, at least in my understanding, was like universally accepted.
Yeah.
And then it even says like so consent must be informed and can be withdrawn at any time without any prejudice or disadvantage. And then finally, the Article 11 it has to do with non-discrimination and non-stigmatism. It says no individual or group should be discriminated against, stigmatized on any grounds in violation of human dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedoms. So like these are all things that the world had, until just recently, like within the last year, had held to be like fundamental principles of like of a developed society or a civilized nation, right? Like we are not going to force people to participate in medical procedures or experiments against their consent, right? So why have we fallen so far from that? Like I think it's because people have been convinced that anyone who isn't jumping on the vaccine train is a selfish human being who doesn't care about society. And so like that kind of comes back to what I said before. Like that is not the case.
Nope.
At all. Like,
and that opinion is backed by emotion, not information.
Well, yeah. And that's the response you'll get from a lot of people, right? If anyone is even willing to really ask me why I feel the way I do, or why I have chosen the path I have, it's, they might say, well, I don't agree with you. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But then rarely do I ever get any really detailed information back, right? They just kind of defer to some kind of generic statement like, well, can't argue with thousands of doctors and scientists. I'm like, well, you are right now. Like you making this argument is arguing with like thousands of doctors and scientists who have been trying to raise the alarm that something's not right.
Yeah, and a lot of them are actually treating COVID, yes, and have treated thousands of them. So there is no better authority on this subject than those people like Peter McCullough. You cannot argue with that man. You can't. You can try, but you'll get destroyed.
I think I heard him in an interview say that Steve Kirsch had put like a $2 million on the table for anyone who would come and debate Peter McCullough or someone like Peter McCullough on early treatment. Okay. And it doesn't sound like anyone's taken him up on that, right? And you would think with all of these experts that are backing the public health strategy, someone would be like, oh, I'll go have this debate for $2 million. Like, I don't even know, did they even have to win the debate or just be willing to do it? No,
they just had to show up.
Well,
so the other day, it was like a week ago, we finally, because Steve he's so amazing at finding people, and with his persistence, his polite persistence, we're open to debating you. He keeps drilling and reminding and opening the door and saying, please come and debate us. Show us where we're wrong. He's been doing this probably the whole time I've known him, which is almost, I think, a year now, maybe a little more. And the other day, I was on his debate team. It was me and Mike Eden and Mark Girard. There was a lot of really smart people there. Matthew Croft. Like you probably couldn't put together anyway, there are lots of smart people. And somehow I was there too. So we were there, we were ready. Two doctors on the opposing side, the ones protecting the narrative, had agreed to debate us. So we were really excited. We planned it. Me and the team rehearsed for like an hour before to make sure that we weren't talking over each other. We took time to write questions. We each had 4 really like basic questions that we thought everyone in the public wants to know the answer to, which is really questions that everyone wants to know the answer to, like basic ones. What's an asymptomatic, blah, blah, these kinds of things. And we were there, we waited 21 minutes on the call, and they refused to come because they didn't want to be recorded. And then they left. And then they disallowed Steve from even being able to go up onto their platform to ask questions to them. Just pure and utter back down cowardice.
Mm-hmm.
It's inexplicable. It's the second time I've witnessed it and taken time. I'm very busy now, and an hour of my time is a lot. And so it's insulting, it's rude, it proves that they have nothing to stand on, because come on, we're all here. We're showing ourselves. We're not afraid, because we're basing our stance on facts and truth. Talk to us. Mm-hmm. We're here. We're not going to make fun of you. We're not going to degrade you like everyone seems to be doing to us. We're going to be basing this on facts and experience. And we're only interested in the truth. We're only interested in disseminating information to as many people as we can. That's our interest. And they didn't show up. Mm. So we can't get anyone to even talk to us.
Well, I think people in Canada here that are in your position, like the Canadian COVID Care Alliance, like Dr. Ira Berenstein, Dr. Byron Bridle, like those are 2 of the people who've been quite vocal and public. I actually got to meet both of them a couple of weeks ago, which was like almost like a little. I had like a little a moment of like, oh my God, like how am I even on the same stage as these people? But
that talk that Byram gave, I saw you there. I was like, that was the most amazing talk. Yeah. He's such a killer speaker. I mean, I think he found his calling.
Yeah, well, so he was one of the first Canadian. Him and Dr. Berenstein were the first 2 Canadians that I knew of that were speaking out publicly, like, Dr. Berenstein about off-label drug protocols and how you absolutely can legally use it in Canada, and then Dr. Bridle, when he talked exactly about what you mentioned about the biodistribution of the lipid nanoparticle.
Yeah, he's the one that created the Japanese study.
That's right. So I heard Steve Kirsch talk about that on Dark Horse with Robert Malone. So my understanding is like they have been consistently providing information to government and public health, like policymakers, and inviting that same like debate, like let's debate openly in a public forum so Canadians can make an informed choice, and no takers. Although I did see there was a member of the provincial parliament, so that'd be like state government for you, in Ontario, who gave like a wicked speech the other day in the Ontario legislature. I want to say his name is Rick Shields, and he laid it all out, which is like, that's the first time that I know of an MP actually laying out like the concerns about vaccine safety and effectiveness, and the censorship and the suppression of early treatment protocols, and like the intimidation that our physicians are facing. Like we've had doctors stripped of their license or stripped of their emergency room.
Their practices burned down.
Yeah, Dr. Hoff, right? In BC. Yeah. And
twice.
then twice,
apparently. This is what I've heard. Yep.
So I mean, like that to me, it's like,
what is that?
How much more is it going to take for the mass population to be like, what is going on? Like, I've tried to tell people, like, how certain things don't make sense? It's because they don't make sense. Like if you walk into a restaurant and you have to wear a mask, but then you sit down to eat right across from each other with no masks, but then you have to put it back on when you stand up to walk to the bathroom. It's like, what, SARS-CoV-2 only exists at around like between 4 and 6 feet high?
Even worse
Like,
than that. How about when I have to be 6 feet apart from the person in front of me to get into the plane, but they're seating, they're
right
calling,
here.
they're calling each section up at the same time. So it's like everybody in section E come up. So
Mhm.
I'm in E, you're in E. We're probably going to be sitting right next to each other, but we have to be 6 feet apart while going on the plane, and then we're going to be elbow to elbow, breathing, sharing air. We're going to be, eating and drinking, talking to each other, elbow to elbow.
Recycled air for like 10
Mm.
hours.
If that's
Did you see that funny video with the guy who's like, I'm not finished eating, and he has like sandwich, and he's like, I'm not finished eating, and he has a bag of chips because the girl keeps telling him to put his mask on, and he's like, I'm not finished eating, and he has shawarma.
I think I did see that.
So funny.
But
A big old slab of meat.
he's right. I mean, it a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense, not because it's above our understanding of it. It's because it just doesn't make any fucking sense.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, like it just simple things that, like, I've heard so many people say, oh, this doesn't make any sense. Like, you're right, it doesn't. And yet the majority of the population is complying because they feel like it's law. And like, I guess that is where I would express my opinion as from a law enforcement perspective. It's like, okay, there are provincial regulations that have been put in place in Ontario, for example, the Reopening Ontario Act, and that's like falls underneath our Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act umbrella. But like, nothing supersedes our Constitution, like the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, right? Like our fundamental rights. Like even in those pieces of legislation, the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, it still says section 7.02, it still says it's subject to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And then like there's a Federal Emergencies Act, and right in the preamble, before you even get into the subsections of that, it talks about how the Federal Emergencies Act is still subject to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and that it cannot basically, it cannot abridge fundamental freedoms even in times of a national emergency. But it seems to me, when I read all of that, all the new, like the Reopening Ontario Act is new. And when I read it, it doesn't even specify who enforces the new mandates, like the masking mandate and the vaccine passport. Like, you have to go into the Emergency Management Act to find it. Like it based essentially like a peace officer. But in the Reopening Ontario Act, it puts all of the onus on the business owner or the facility manager and the individual to comply. And my understanding is that the federal government here in Canada just downloaded all of the responsibilities for emergency management to the provinces, even though we have our own Federal Emergencies Act. And that's not unexpected, because healthcare is typically all managed by the different provinces, like it's a provincial jurisdiction. But I just see it's like, that is such a typical thing of government bureaucracy. It's like federal chucks it down to the provincial government, like, no, you're going to have to deal with any fallout over this. Like if people start to roll in with human rights complaints or lawsuits. And then underneath that, the provincial government basically shifts the buck down to the business owners and the individuals for liability, essentially. And it's like, that is such a cowardly government thing to do. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the only way I can describe it, is cowardice, right? Like, it's all about CYA. It's not about actually doing a good job. It's about covering their own ass. And pardon my language, but like that mindset, I can tell you from my personal experience, is like just infested the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And it has been even pre-COVID, right? Like, I remember I got upset with a supervisor once. He's talking about, oh, make good notes, CYA. And I said to him, how about we make good notes so we can actually solve a crime? Right? Like that's our job. Our job isn't to CYA. Like, I mean, I'm not going to be stupid or reckless and put myself at risk because I'm being reckless. But like, our job is supposed to be good at law enforcement. But I'll be honest, there are a ton of high quality members that I have worked with in my career. Actually, the vast majority of the members I've worked with have been like good, hardworking people. They want to do a good job. But at a managerial level, our organization is broken. Like it's
sounds familiar.
It's so political, right? Like it is like a large government entity. And it is all about public perception and CYA. Like it's at some point in time, I don't know exactly when it was. I can't put my finger on it. It probably started to happen before I even got in, which was about 15 years ago. Like at some point, it seems like we stopped caring about being good or doing good law enforcement work and pivoted to it's about appearing like we're good at law enforcement. It's all about appearances and public perception. And so I see that those same themes that I've experienced in my policing career applied to what's happening with our public health and our government mandates. Because like so many times I've had conversations with coworkers, even pre-COVID, that like things just don't make sense. Like the big machine turns slow, completely inefficient, wasteful of resources sometimes, even though they tell like, oh, we have to be responsible stewards. It's like, well, prove it. Like show me one example where you've done something really, really well, like really efficiently and really well. And so that's another thing that kind of is hard for me to keep in when I'm having conversations with people. It's like, how often have you criticized the government for being incompetent and the mainstream media for being biased? All the time. So why do you think that they are being like what they say right now is like the gospel truth, right? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like my experience is like every time the government sinks their fingers or their claws into something deeper, it falls apart worse, right? Like, I mean,
yeah, I just said it today. It's like, yeah, the obviousness of the truth. The government would never lie to you. But meanwhile, I mean, where I live, there's this awful petrol refinery plant, like way too close to the residential areas. And when the wind shifts, you really get really dangerous pollution coming in, and you can't not breathe. So I'm out there surfing today, and I have to breathe deeply because exertion, and it's just poison shit that I'm taking in, and there are known carcinogens in it. They know all about it. They're supposed to shut it down in a few years, but like benzene and sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and all this lovely stuff. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm having a good time, but I'm also thinking to myself, it's like, these are the same people who you're saying would never hurt you by giving you an experimental product that might damage you, but yet they're dumping metric tons of poison gas into your air every day, every night, all day, all night, which is giving you cancer. The cancer rates where I live are off the charts. This is all known stuff, but it's allowed to go on. But yet, you see what I mean? It's like they're doing it right in front of your face. They don't give a crap about you. They care about their profits and keeping the petrol machine going. So why all of a sudden are you not only trusting them on this, but when anyone confronts you on it, you get maniacally defensive, and you're all of a sudden like the biggest big pharma, rep that I've ever seen. It's like, why do you even think a corporation has trust value? It's not a person. It's a profit machine. So like, use your common sense.
Well, I think that a lot of the resistance I've experienced with people to my viewpoint is it's a psychological block, perhaps. They are experiencing, they did what they thought they had to do to move on with life. And now they don't want to be, and people have COVID fatigue, right? Like, I get that. I do too. Like, I would, like, just let me go back to normal. I promise I won't put anybody in danger, right? If me and my family aren't feeling well, we'll be responsible. We'll stay home. You know, we're not going to go out and like knowingly infect everyone. But so they want to just move on with life, or, you know, they just couldn't hold on anymore. Like, I know lots of people who did hold on for as long as they could, but then like it got to them where like they had to be, you know, they had to be involved with society, and they had to be involved with, they had to maintain their employment. And that, I really feel for those people who ended up feeling like they had no choice and getting it, even though they didn't want to. And I've been on that precipice many times myself. Like, there was many times over the last few months where I was right on the edge, and I was looking around at people and trying to rationalize it in my head. Like, oh, you know, they seem okay. Like, am I overanalyzing this? And
I know,
but every time I tried to rationalize it to myself, I kept thinking, I kept hearing those voices in my head, like from the Canadian COVID Care Alliance, FLCCC, Global COVID Summit, you know, like all of these incredibly qualified people that are saying like, this is wrong. What is happening is wrong. And I just know that if I had done it to try and save my job, it would have ruined me in my job, and it would have ruined me in my home life. I would have just become a hateful, toxic person, and I would be bitter and resentful, and everybody else around me would have felt the brunt of that.
yeah.
And so I just couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. And I wish, I've expressed before that I wish I would have spoken up sooner, because I knew that there was something not right, but I kind of kept waiting for like the narrative to start to shift, as like evidence was becoming more like almost overwhelming to the point where it can't be ignored anymore.
They're gonna try.
But it wasn't happening, right? Like it was, and so I was rationalizing it to myself. It's like, okay, there's a possibility I could be wrong, but I'm comfortable with my decision. And ultimately, adults have a responsibility to inform themselves and make their own decisions. So I was kind of leaving it at that point where it's like, okay, as long as they leave it about choice, then who am I to criticize another person for making a choice that they felt was the best medical decision for themselves? Because I mean, we don't know what everyone's stories is. We don't know what kind of medical conditions people are subject to. But as soon as they started to take it away, take the choice away and mandate things just to be involved in normal parts of society and for employment, that's when I felt like, okay, like this can't continue, right? This cannot continue. And it was like, it was a while still, even after they took the choice away, for me to make the final step to start speaking out publicly. But those weeks where I was trying to decide what to do were the most stressful and anxiety ridden for me. Like, that's when I got, my sleep was completely disrupted. I could barely sleep. My heart was like, I almost felt like I was vibrating like all day long, because like I was, you know, sitting there thinking like, okay, I wanted to do the right thing, but I also knew that that was going to have implications for my family and my children. And, you know, because as soon as you start speaking out publicly, you give up all of that comfort and security of silence, right? Like, where you don't want to have confrontation with people, because there are some people that have, you know, they're very vocal, whether it's online or in person. And I don't think it's not the normal conditioned response for people to go seeking that confrontation. Most people will avoid it if possible. But when I did start to speak out was when I instantly started to feel better. Like instantly, I started to sleep better and I started to feel better about myself. Like I still have little moments where I don't feel as confident that things are going to turn out the way I want, or the way that I hope for humanity. But it's building, right? I think like at some point in time, boosters becoming mandated, that's only a matter of time. I'm convinced of that. I know many people who did take it, but they're refusing to have it for their children. So then if they start to impose, vaccine passports for kids 5 to 11 years old to participate in activities, I think you're going to see a greater buildup of resistance. I'm done. I'm not complying anymore. I'm not going to be silent anymore. Like my little catchphrase that I've used lots of times is my line in the sand. I firmly believe that if we continue to allow them to encroach, they're going to keep encroaching. Like it's not just going to stop. I'm very skeptical that next spring vaccine passports aren't going to exist, like unless the population demands it, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
You worked really close, obviously, with Trudeau and other politicians, and what I don't know how much like personal conversations you saw them having or interactions. I mean, from your perspective, what do you think is guiding this? I mean, do you just think that anybody who's in that position probably is power hungry and enjoys having that authority over people? Or do you think there's some sincere people who are just being corrupted? I mean, what's kind of from your perspective, from being somewhat close to these high-ranked officials, what's your feeling of who they are and their personalities?
Oh, I'm being in my position with the tactical unit and especially as a sniper, like I rarely had very close contact with the person we were protecting. When the prime minister first came into office, he had a reputation for being like, maybe he wasn't the most qualified person for his job, like definitely not, but I was hopeful that he would surround himself with competent people that knew what they were doing. And the recurring thing that I kept hearing from like his bodyguards, like the people that work closely with him, is like, he's very nice. Like he's kind, right? He treats people like he treated them like he was on a first name basis with a lot of them. And there was a honeymoon phase where people were like, oh, he's a good guy. I'm not so convinced of that now, right? Like,
Yeah.
and not, I mean, and even not just because of COVID-19, like definitely he's, me and him do not see eye to eye on that for sure. But on the restrictions and the vaccine mandates, obviously that's had a huge impact on myself and people in my position. But even prior to that, like I can't quite put my finger on whether he's completely oblivious to what he's doing or he's actually corrupt, because he has been involved in multiple scandals regarding like ethics and conflicts of interest, both like financial and even interfering with our previous Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould. Like he's been subject to a number of scandal stories in the news media, even with our own mainstream media, and he just keeps skating on these things. Like every time he does something that, in my view, I'm like, oh, this is it for him. He's done now. Things just carry on. Like
Yeah.
he definitely does have a base in Canada that like really adores him, but I just don't. I can't see how he still appeals to so many people when he's proven himself. This is a line that I'm stealing from a member that I worked with a number of years ago. and not specific to Justin Trudeau, but it relates, and like he's morally and ethically bankrupt. Like that's how I feel about him right now. Like
I agree.
he's using language that is deliberately dividing the population. He
Absolutely.
has, earlier in 2021, he was right on camera with like a Zoom interview saying, "Oh, we would never implement vaccine passports in Canada. It's segregation." He didn't actually say segregation, but he said he came right out and said we would never do that in Canada because of our constitution. And that's true. It's right in a document about, like, it's the Canadian National Report on Immunization, something like that. It's from 1996. It says it right in that document that vaccine or immunizations cannot be made mandatory in Canada because of the constitution. So he said he's completely reversed course on many things. And the initial announcement about restrictions on mobility, like with flying and trains, like that, to me, the initial announcement, it appeared that it was only regarding domestic travel. And that's like, they know that they're skirting that line, because like right in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, like it says like every Canadian citizen has the right to enter, remain in, and leave Canada. So, but now they've even crossed that boundary. Now you're not even allowed to get on a plane for an international flight without proof of vaccination or an exemption of some kind. But the criteria to get an exemption are pretty strict. Like I don't know for certain. I did read it just recently, but I can't remember if even if a religious exemption was accepted. Like I think it's very specific medical criteria, and everything that I'm hearing, like anecdotally from people I know that have sought exemptions, it's very difficult to get one, even from a medical standpoint. Like I've been told personally of someone who had experienced myocarditis after the first shot, and they won't even grant them an exemption from the second dose. They're just telling them that no, it's okay. You just have to wait a longer period of time before you receive your second dose. So, and I've heard similar stories, but I've had at least one person tell me that exact thing.
Well, here's a medical exemption. How about if you've tested positive for it, like you should get a medical exemption? Because
Whoa.
I mean, what's crazy is people aren't even comparing natural immunity to the vaccine anymore. Now, like natural immunity just doesn't count for anything. Like the fact that there's not any discussion about antibody tests, the fact that, I mean, there's people who've already tested positive twice. I mean, they must have antibodies if the tests are accurate. So it's like the tests work if if you're talking about quarantining people and making them stay at home, but the tests don't work or aren't really a good tool to be used to figure out if somebody probably already has the antibodies and doesn't need to be vaccinated.
Well, that's another thing I've mentioned in previous interviews, is like that is another one of those major red flags as to why this is not about public health and this is about compliance, because they're not even willing to entertain the possibility that natural immunity could contribute to the herd immunity effort, right? Whereas, like, I mean, again, I'd default to Dr. Rose on this, but I've seen messaging from the FLCCC and groups like that natural immunity, there's many studies now showing that natural immunity is robust and long lasting. And yet, but they're still telling people, well, no, you still got to get it. You still got to get the vaccine to qualify for your vaccine passport, even if you're naturally immune. Like,
which only provides like more support for the idea that this is not about a virus. It's not about the injections. It's about the passport.
Yeah. It's about compliance.
so,
Yeah.
so yeah, exactly. So
Everybody, they want to monitor and control everybody. And just like they do in dictatorships in the past, or even communist countries now, they're telling you that all the restrictions they're putting on your life and all the freedoms they're sacrificing is to protect you. You don't think they tell the Chinese people that the reason why we let you have free open internet is because we want you to have less freedoms? No, they're telling them it's because we're protecting you.
Yeah, it's for your safety.
Yeah, and that's why I say, like, we're like, before, people used to talk about North Korea, how they're, the whole population is brainwashed. I'm like, the whole world has become some mild version of North Korea, where we're all convinced that this hierarchy, this monarchy, the elites, the whoever, which, like you said, Trudeau's no different than any politician. I mean, the majority of politicians have a laundry list, if you look at their political career, of unethical things they have done, and all of a sudden they're ethical people. Same thing with big pharma. Dr. Rose and I have talked about this numerous of times, how it blows my effing mind, the story after story after story. And that's the thing, like, these things aren't even fully FDA approved, but fully FDA approved things
there's a reason for that too.
off the market. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Danny.
Well, sorry.
I should have let you.
So no, you know what? I'm going to leave that alone, because that could turn into a very long part of this conversation. And looking at the clock there, I'm going to have to go in about 20 minutes to get my kids from school. But when you mentioned the FDA right there, that tweaked my memory again. Like, so I sent a message to Public Health Canada a number of months ago, because when I was doing my own, I call it my open source investigation, I was looking at the vaccine trials and the therapeutic trials for as authorized by Public Health Canada. And I didn't know how Health Canada worked, but I saw that out of 91 trials for therapeutics for the treatment of COVID-19, 91 in Canada, 73 of those 91 have this little numerical indicator, NCT number. And when you click on it, it goes right to the NIH website. And that was also true for 17 out of the 18 vaccine trials. So I'm like, seems to me like we're just doing whatever Anthony Fauci says. And so, which is no surprise, right? Canada often just basically sees what America is doing, and then we're just a little bit behind them. But when I looked through every single one of those trials, like all 91 of them, and ivermectin wasn't listed once. And I was like, how is that possible? Like, if you're getting in front of people on microphones doing daily briefings, claiming that you're doing everything you can to stop the pandemic, but like, you don't even have one trial studying the possibility of ivermectin for the treatment of COVID. And I mean, I know it's the people advocating for it. It's not like a single drug protocol, right? Like, it's multi-drug protocol, but it's definitely one that has got a lot of media attention and a lot of misleading, deceitful statements made about it in the media. So yeah, exactly. So I sent an email asking, like, basically expressing my concern. Like, look, I'm a Canadian citizen. I'm looking at your website, and it absolutely is astounding to me that out of 91 clinical trials, you wouldn't even have a single trial about ivermectin when it has garnered so much attention globally, right? And Health Canada and most of the provincial health statement or public health statements that I've seen regarding ivermectin, it's like, oh, there's insufficient evidence. And then they'll cite like the Elgazar study of being of concern. But I actually got a response back from them. And I wish I had it in front of me, but essentially the Coles notes of the response was like, thank you, Mr. Bulford, for your inquiry. Essentially, the reason that there is no study by Health Canada looking at ivermectin is because they're not they don't conduct the research, they don't fund the research, and that it would have to be sponsored, right? So I was like, oh, okay, because my understanding is that the NIH does sponsor research, but so essentially I learned that Health Canada isn't funding the research. They're just waiting for results to come in, is kind of the impression that I got from the response. And so I forwarded that on to the COVID Care Alliance, like, oh, like this is the reply that I got. And they were kind of said, oh yeah, that's kind of standard. But that was something to me as a person outside of that world, like that blew me away, that our own federal government isn't like actively funding research. You know, there was lots of universities, like Canadian universities that were, and researchers that were part of some of these studies, many of them sponsored by the NIH, or they had that little NIH numerical identifier attached to it. But even in that reply, it was even suggested that perhaps myself, or I could find someone to sponsor a research study. And I'm like,
yeah, why don't we
I need to find someone to sponsor a research study?
It's all on us, man. Like, it really is.
Like, I'm just a concerned citizen. Like, you are the public health agency. You are the Health Canada, right? Like, this, wouldn't the onus be on you to find someone to study whether this is working or not? Like, if you truly claim to be doing everything you can to stop the pandemic. Like, that blew me away. So I kind of, a little bit tongue in cheek, I fired them a reply saying, well, here, I can save you the time and effort. And I sent them like a screenshot of that big table in that ivmmeta.com document where it has like all the different studies and, and it breaks down like peer-reviewed randomized controlled trials, exclusion studies, and all the different patients and the outcomes for prevention, early treatment. And I mean, I didn't get a reply back on that yet, but they are a little bit behind. They have a backlog on replies, I'm sure. But and so I've heard other people speak to that regarding like FDA and CDC, like they're regulatory agencies. But I think it was Del Bigtree said that essentially they take the pharmaceutical company's word for it when it comes to safety and efficacy. So
the FDA doesn't do any of the studies. The pharmaceutical companies give them the research to help get it FDA approved. What they don't tell you also is that there's no requirement for them to show any studies that show that their product's unsafe. So those studies get put away. And then you can show only the studies that prove that your product are safe. This also creates a relationship between the people doing the studies and the pharmaceutical companies, because if you want to get hired again, you want to give them the results they want. So the whole system's broken. None of it makes any sense. And so, yeah, I mean, without a doubt, I mean, that's like a common thing most people don't know, that when something gets FDA approved, it's not even FDA approved from based on the FDA's research. It's FDA approved based on Big Pharma's research, who, with all the money they invested on research and development, wants to get this thing patented. I mean, look what's going on now with just the vaccine patents. I mean, if it's not another great example that this is not about stopping some pandemic, they, I think it's the nurses union or something like that that's fighting against trying to get Pfizer and Moderna to release the patent and let other people produce the vaccines. But that was something that happened really early, where Bill Gates even was was interviewed somewhere, and they asked him about it, and he's like, oh, no, they should hold the patents, because the argument was that there's other labs and other places where, if it was really about getting everybody vaccinated as quickly as possible, if that was the only concern, then why not give everybody access to the information and give them the ability to legally make the same product, so we can get it out as quickly as possible, and all this workload wouldn't just fall on Pfizer and Moderna and J&J. But that they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to do that because they wanted to make sure they got maximum profit. And the same thing with the booster shot. I mean, every time you suggest getting another booster, that's maximum profit. If the vaccine didn't work the first time you got it, and the virus has changed 6 months later or a year later, why would it work any better?
Careful, you're about to say something sensible.
one thing I see, I'm getting tight on time here, but I just wanted to say, have you seen Table 2E from the NIH website? Table 2E, characteristics of antiviral agents. Oh, sorry, I just have a paper copy. But
let me see.
Table 2E.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so this, everyone says, FDA themselves even put out that horse dewormer campaign against ivermectin, right? Like, you're not a horse, so don't use it, blah, blah, blah. And then CNN had their historic, like,
for yourself.
lie about Joe Rogan taking horse dewormer, and he totally called them out on it, and it was fantastic, which is great because he has a way bigger audience than they will ever hope to have.
Their ass.
Oh, totally. It was awesome.
I know.
He got Dr. Gupta to apologize essentially right on camera that, yeah, they should not have said that. Anyways, I learned this from a Laura Lynn, Tyler Thompson interview with Dr. Brian Ardis. So on this table from the NIH website, Table 2E, characteristics of antiviral agents that are approved or under evaluation for treatment of COVID-19. You got remdesivir at the top. I'm sure you've probably spoken to people about that and how, like, well, I'll just leave it at that. I've spoken about that as well, about how it was authorized based on very, very small amount of evidence and Dr. Fauci's recommendation. But
it's poison too.
Well, yeah, right. Like people, I mean, I've heard doctors talk about how it could potentially be harmful, and it even has on the adverse events like renal and liver failure.
It's very toxic to your liver and kidnees.
But it's profitable. It's profitable, right?
And it's also contraindicated with hydroxychloroquine, right from Gilead Sciences.
Ouch.
Right. So I'm like, there's a little thread to pull at there for people who want to do a little investigative work. So remdesivir is number one. Number two, do you know what the number two drug is on that table?
Let me guess.
Ivermectin.
Oh!
Ivermectin. So, and this table was last updated July 8th, 2021. If you go on their website, nih.gov, and then you type in, so I did it right after I heard Dr. Ardis say this. Table 2E, characteristics of antiviral agents approved or under evaluation. So, I mean, they might try and make an argument it's under evaluation. I don't know. But number two on that list, right from the NIH, is ivermectin. So they've all been saying, oh, that's not FDA approved. You can't use that.
But, no, it is, but it's off label. So,
yeah, exactly. But even for COVID-19, it's right here on this table of theirs.
Right.
So, I mean, like some of the adverse events for remdesivir, it's a giant list, and it even talks about liver and renal failure. But then when you look at the ivermectin adverse events, it says generally well tolerated, dizziness, pruritus, which I'm not sure what that is, GI effects, and then it says there's a little caveat there that says neurological effects or adverse events have been reported when ivermectin has been used to treat parasitic diseases, but it is not clear whether these adverse events were caused by ivermectin or the underlying condition.
Right.
So, like, the list of side effects for ivermectin is almost nothing compared to what you see next to remdesivir. And it's just, that's this argument that people have been making against ivermectin so many times. Oh, you can't use that. You can't use that. You can't use that. Like, well, apparently you can, according to the NIH.
Yeah, it's
who
just
knew?
So
that's not advertised, right? No one ever talks about the NIH unless they're talking about Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, pruritus is itching, but like, yeah, you need to read Robert's new book.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Because, they talk about that, and they talk about AZT, and it's like what people don't know, and hopefully they will learn soon, is so shocking. I mean, this remdesivir crap. I mean, it's so obviously just a money-making scheme. It's poison. It's Fauci's pill. It costs a fortune. And what's with that ventilator crap? I mean, that's the protocol when you go into the hospital. Even now, where I live, if you go in and you have, if you're on the other side of the bad disease progress with COVID, They give you remdesivir, which will basically kill you. I'm not being sarcastic. And they shove a vent down your throat, which if the remdesivir doesn't kill you, that will. That's the protocol. I have a friend whose grandpa went in, he's 82, he had COVID, and they were about to swoop him away from his family and do that to him. And he said, hold on, I don't agree to this. And he went home and he got better. So it's like, yeah, wow. I think it has, you mentioned the CBC, and I think that's great. And I think that's how it has to happen with the legacy media. It has to be slow, because the cognitive dissonance and the spell, the hypnosis, it has to be broken slowly. Otherwise, we're going to implode.
Well, I do think if the entire population instantly believed that they have been lied to this entire time, and we let people die, like, because we told doctors they weren't allowed to use certain medicines. And we destroyed our economies and our societies, and we drove people apart by putting them in camps for, unvaccinated versus vaccinated,
and lost their jobs. And
yep. I think that could become very problematic. Yeah,
to say the least.
Yeah.
Like, there would be no definition for that. Civil war would not cut it.
I mean, the swine flu vaccine back in the day in the 70s, that was a similar story where they scared the shit out of people. I just shared the video recently because you can still find it. I think it was like 2020 or I don't know, Nightline or one of the late night shows end up doing a little story on it, on how, it was paralyzing people and harming people. And it was, and it's one of those things. I hope this is a similar story where you can only suppress the truth for so long that, people will look around and be like, listen, I know more people who are harmed from the vaccine than people who've been harmed from COVID. I know more people that, are living happily in Florida than I know, and completely fine, and no hospitals are filled, than I know people who are happy in California. And people start looking around, and because I don't think the mainstream media will ever give in. I mean, the money is from Big Pharma will keep going to them to push this narrative. I think what ends up happening is that Big Pharma is like, hey, you can, this is the truth. We can't suppress it forever. And eventually we're just going to have to run, take our profits and run, and hope that, we don't all end up in jail or in some big trouble. And so that's what, I think that's hopefully what ends up happening with every one of these podcasts, every single conversation. Brave people like you, Danny, and Jessica, who are willing to do interviews and be outspoken and share your thoughts on this and your own research. And like Danny, you're referring to stuff that the average person who would be very emotional and on the other side of the argument wouldn't even know about. I mean, that's the sad part of all this, is some of the most outspoken people on the other side, 2 seconds in talking to them, I'm like, you haven't looked into this at all.
Well, I've had many conversations where people look at me like, what's VAERS? Like, I've had people say that to me, and I'm like, okay, like then that to me just indicates like, okay, like, I know a lot of people have been critical of VAERS, but I'm like, well, it's the only system that seems to really collect much data, period.
Yep.
But like, if you've never even heard of it, then you haven't looked at the other side. You haven't looked at the counter narrative at all. Well, that's what that indicates to me.
Yeah,
Yep.
You're talking to a white belt. I'm like, and I'm far from a black belt. I'm not Dr. Jessica Rose, multiple stripes on my black belt, but I'm like, I'm not a white belt. I've done a little bit. I've done a little bit of research, and I've talked to some people who've done a lot of bit of research, and my opinion is based on actual information and knowledgeable people who understand this information. And like I said, the other side is just, it's unfortunate that it's so emotional, because this is a topic that both sides should be coming together for. The right should be pissed about government overreach, and the left should be anti-greedy corporations who only care about profit and don't care about people.
Infringing on individual rights and freedoms.
Yeah, I mean that.
the hypocrisy of like our government here in Canada. But it's not just the Justin Trudeau Liberal government. Like the three biggest conservative premiers in Canada, like Doug Ford in Ontario, Scott Moe in Saskatchewan, Jason Kenney in Alberta, they all folded. They all did exactly what they all said that they would never do it either. Or we would never do that. Jason Kenney, like that's my home province, Alberta. So I mean, that's near and dear to my heart. And that guy, he in one breath, he said, we'll never do that in Canada. I don't even know what a vaccine passport is, other than I know that it's illegal. And then boom, here it came in the fall, just like everybody else. And so what makes me crazy, or sorry, that's a bad word to say, or that's not the right word. What makes me very frustrated is when it's like, we have both sides constantly, like, I mean, from like the conservative and the liberal politically in Canada, talking heads pretending to be the champions of individual rights and freedoms on every single topic except for this one, because they're still trying to beat that drum that it's like, no, you got to do it for society. It's like, me getting it doesn't protect anybody else. This is a personal medical choice based on my personal risk assessment. And like you said, Ricky, I am way more willing to confront a virus that I'm naturally exposed to and let my body do what billions of years of evolution have taught it to do, as opposed to like repeated injections over and over again of something that I have no control over once it's inside of me.
Like, and hear you say that. I mean, it's like, let's hear you say that 2 years ago, the entire population of humans would be like, yeah, of course.
Well,
but no.
Like you mentioned about the athletes, right? Like, not that I'm an elite level athlete, but I am fit, and I have taken fitness very seriously for my whole life. And I do push myself. I exert my heart on a regular basis. And so based on everything I've seen, my risk assessment tells me that I am way more at risk from a major cardiac event with a vaccine than I am of serious illness and disease from COVID-19.
Absolutely.
Right? Especially if a doctor was allowed to treat me with some of these early treatment protocols.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's oh man, that that to me, I think the suppression of the early treatment and like intimidation of doctors losing their license because they have actually treated and saved people using these medications, like that's an even bigger crime than constantly pushing this vaccine narrative. Because like, we have knowingly let people die, thousands of them in Canada, thousands of them, and millions globally, right? Like, if you really wanted to do everything you could to stop this, like they claim, when you hear these doctors who are using these medications dosed properly, it's safer than aspirin, right?
Yes.
And they're talking about ivermectin, like
Surely.
hydroxychloroquine. These medications have been around for a long time, and they've been used for many different things for a long time in human beings, not just animals. And how many people could we have saved? Like, will we ever know? Well, right? Like,
yeah, I know.
I hear these numbers of like, this doctor treated 6,000 patients, no hospitalizations and death. This doctor treated 4,000 patients, no hospitalizations and death. I just saw something, I can't remember if it was Pierre Corey or Robert Malone shared on their Telegram channel. There's like a group of doctors who treated, like when you're looking at their total patient volume, it's like 150,000 patients treated, less than 24 deaths.
Yeah.
Like, who we knew, like that, from a police officer standpoint, that's when I have like these little mini fantasies of staring Justin Trudeau in the eye or staring Theresa Tam in the eye one day and saying, when did you know we could have saved the vast majority of people, but you were too arrogant to admit it?
But this is where I don't think this this issue is a standalone issue in regards to their ability to let people die, because I think that's the part that people have a hard time grasping, is like, so you're telling me that people are knowingly injuring people, or people are knowingly letting people die, and I think people have a hard time, accepting that, because you want to look.
Yes, that's what we're saying.
Yeah. And so then they're like, no, that can't be. But I always use the example. I'm like, okay, how about the Iraq War, for example? Weapons of mass destruction that never existed, linked it to September 11th, which there was no links to. We knew that we were going to end up killing innocent people in a country that was not connected to September 11th. And the politicians knew it. They didn't care. They went along with it anyways. And they used war propaganda to push that narrative and capitalize on people's emotions, because similar to this, it's like hospitals are filled. Don't kill grandmother, to protect people. It's like, it's all about emotion manipulation. And that's what we're seeing over and over again. It's like, so this isn't a new trick. They've done this over and over again. They've knowingly let people die. They've knowingly put people in dangerous way for their own personal benefit or reasons. So, it's always happened, and it always will continue to happen. Not to say that there's not good politicians out there. I'm sure there are. I haven't met many or any yet, but I'm sure they're out there. But I think when you get to the top level, you have to get along to get ahead. You have to play along with the game, and you're not going to get to the top level of politics if you don't do some of these corrupted things and take money from people you shouldn't, and bend the rules and lie a little bit about what you're going to promise and all this other stuff. So but
here's the thing about that, like and I hope there are some politicians listening right now. Those of you who choose in this moment in time to stand up and have a spine and to actually make decisions for the people, you are going to have so much support. You're going to win everything. And I don't just mean elections. I mean, you're going to win everything. That's what I don't get about this, because if you really want to be smart now, you want to listen to what, we're saying. And not only that, you want to choose the right side of history, as, people are saying, and let everything kind of happen the way that it will, because I know this is going to sound cheesy, but the truth always comes out, and the good always defeats evil in the end. I don't know what the end's going to be, but it's more powerful. If I was a politician, I'd be planting my flag of, I don't think so. I'd get my financial support from wherever I can get it, because there are a lot of rich people on the side of the truth right now, a lot. There's no lack of money in the world. And I think my support group would grow enormously fast. It's like you said, Daniel, it's like for all the people that we're losing, we're gaining so many more. And if I may, I've met such high quality people through this. Like I can call some of them good friends now. I've never met them in real life, but it's, the force is strong with us.
Well, I agree with you. Unfortunately, I think most politicians have thrown away their moral compass if they're playing in this political game. And
that's even better for the ones that choose to have some ethical stand.
We do have a few of them in Ontario for sure that are pushing back, like that Rick Nichols that I mentioned earlier. Roman Baber is another one. He's been actively trying to oppose certain government overreach and like trying to stand up for, like, I think one of the big things he was pushing, it was like no jab, no job bill. Like he was trying to push back against making mandatory vaccination for people to remain employed. So we do have some politicians that are starting to stand up to this.
And to say in Florida, I mean, that guy.
Oh God, man! Like, there's been so many times when that deadline approaching for my ability to get on an airplane, my wife and I were like, "Are we going to Florida? Are we moving to Florida?" And we're like, like we can't abandon everybody here. But
I just
man, like the temptation was there, man. The temptation was there because I was like, man, I bet I could even get a job like in a heartbeat down there with my background. Like Governor DeSantis, man, that's the kind of leadership we need.
Yeah, and you have Dr. Scott Jensen running for governor also of he's another guy who's been super outspoken, was one of the first people talking about the inflation of numbers and stuff. So there are good people out there, I think, and now is the perfect opportunity for them to take advantage of what's going on in the world and really, so I know you got to pick up your kids soon, and I know Jessica's probably I don't know what
their call, believe it or not. My life is so busy right now.
Well, that's why I'm always super excited when you're willing to come back on, because we don't know how to have short conversations. So for you to take out so much time out of your day to chat, very much appreciated. But if you, well, I'm on, well, I know you have something to say it, and then also let people know where they can stay in touch. Anything you want to plug, anything that's going on. Jessica was on the JFK Robert Kennedy Jr. Podcast recently, so I don't think that's out yet, but I'll be keeping a lookout for that.
It is. It's on my website.
Awesome.
Oh my God, they kept in my story about the crows. Did I tell you that, Ricky?
You did. Yeah.
He kept it in. I was like, oh my God, you dear man. I'm so delighted with that interview because like this, you'll hear it soon, Daniel. It's like, I'm going to share my website so you can see it. It's on the list somewhere at the end. But we had this like 20 minutes, maybe 25, and it was good. I talked about VAERS and he has some excellent questions. But then at the end, we shared a story about crows and ravens, and he's a falconer. And so I was like, please tell me about that because I'm so fascinated with that. And so he told me this amazing story. I won't tell you now because it'll ruin it. But in the interview, it was so like, it made me so happy.
The raven is a major symbol in Indigenous cultures in Canada, especially in the North. When I was working up in the Yukon, that's a big part of their culture and like a lot of their stories. And that's also true of Norse mythology.
Yeah.
Like I think Odin has 2 ravens, I think, that follow him everywhere.
Yeah. I have some crows that I feed every day, which is how the conversation kind of started. And I feed kittens this cat food, which is like this chunky, wet stuff. And the crows, they see me when I come with the jar of cat food, and they swoop over my head so close that I can feel the fluff of their wings. And then they land in front of me and they look at me and I'm like, oh, hi guys. I haven't named them yet, but they're really sweet and they're so reliable. It's like, I'm not very consistent with the exact time. I kind of sometime in the late morning I head out, but they always see me. Like somehow I don't know, they're amazing. They're very smart.
I have one more document to talk to you about, which I also learned from Dr. Artis's interview. So it's on cms.gov, so Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And I don't see the date on this, but it's new COVID-19 treatments add-on payment.
What?
Yeah, so the way he was describing it, I won't read the entire document for you, but it's something to check out. But my understanding through his conversation about it was that, through the NCTAP, the new COVID treatments add-on payment, the Medicare program will provide an enhanced payment for eligible inpatient cases that use certain new products with current FDA approval or emergency use authorization to treat COVID-19, including the following. And one of them is like a convalescent plasma, and then there's Veklury or remdesivir, and then there's another one, Olumiant in combination with remdesivir. So that what he was trying to communicate there was essentially is like the Medicare program was delivering 20% bonus payout
Yeah,
for using remdesivir for
yeah, it's
inpatients.
stigmatization. It's been there. And if you diagnose someone with COVID in a hospital, you get like, I don't know, a lot of money per patient.
Okay, I've heard things like that before, even in Canada. I've heard that story, but I'd never verified that. So, but I just thought when he shared that document, I was like, huh. So I went and I found it, and it definitely seems to indicate what he was talking about. Like there's a financial incentive
Yeah,
to use remdesivir,
yeah.
and whereas there's like an active suppression effort for the off-label drugs.
Yeah, hospitals need to make money too. So like they took advantage of that fact. I know people on the ground who said that that's happening. So it's I don't doubt the people on the ground with the real stories. So yeah, that's not surprising to me at all. Ugh, that remdesivir crap. Like,
And
the other thing, whenever,
oh,
sorry,
no, go ahead.
the other thing about that is like when they're trying to shove it into people, it's way too late. It's an antiviral, right? So you don't need an antiviral by the time you're having like bad symptoms. You need like something else. You need something that's going to act to reduce the inflammatory process going on, or the autoimmune condition that you might be developing. You know, yeah, people need to, they need to start hearing what experts are saying.
Yeah, Ryan from The Last American Vagabond just had a, what's her name? Something Jackson. I forget what her name is. Brooke Jackson, maybe. She's was a part of one of the trials, the vaccine trials, and she's a whistleblower coming out. Russell Brand did actually a little video on her story, and Ryan, actually, I was just talking to Ryan this morning and about trying to get her story out there. And but it's just endless amounts of whistleblowers and people exposing what's really going on. And I want to believe that if we keep kind of chipping away of that mainstream narrative, that eventually people will there's just going to be too much evidence that you just can't deny it anymore, that there's something more going on and this isn't about the public's health. But do you have, Daniel, are you on any social media platforms or have a website or anything that for people to kind of keep up with what you're doing?
Yes. So the main site is Mounties, the number 4 freedom.com. And you can find links to our different social media accounts there. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Telegram. On the website also, I would like to bring people's attention to, we have an open letter that we address to our commissioner of the RCMP. And we got some real headway with that initially. A lot of people added their signature. You can still do that. I think a lot of people maybe tapered off after we actually delivered the letter to the commissioner after collecting I don't remember the exact number, but thousands of signatures. It seems like that has kind of slowed a little bit. I think possibly people just think that, well, the letter's been delivered. You can still put a signature on it if you want. It's very well written. Multiple people authored it, and it's when I read it for the first time, it's almost like a paper. Like there's all kinds of citations and references, and all the reference material was included on that letter, like showing all of the evidence in support of the counter narrative and why we should not be tromping all over our fundamental rights and freedoms. Hoping that the commissioner would pay attention to her own members expressing like there's something majorly wrong with what's going on here, and we need to investigate it. We're the national police force of this country, and it's our duty to investigate both sides and to try and serve and protect the public, right? Like that's our fundamental role as the national police. So if I could draw people's attention to that letter, please read it, share it, sign it. And one message I would like to leave is with my fellow law enforcement officers, especially ones that are being asked to enforce COVID restrictions. You do have a choice. We all, right from the Depot Training Academy in Regina for the RCMP, and for, I'm sure that it's true for every other police force, we have discretion and we can use our judgment. So anytime you are asked to do something that you're not comfortable with because you think, like, just ask yourself, is this a justifiable infringement of the charter rights of this individual? And is it even in the public interest? Like, there are two sides to this story. Use your investigative mind. I am confident if you look at all of the information that I've read, listened to, watched, it's a no contest. The evidence is so much stronger on the counter narrative side. It's not even funny. Like, we as police know better. You can't trust the media to tell the truth. And we've all shaken our head at our own organization and government in general over and over and over again. Use your investigator's mind. And the reason I started to talk about that line in the sand was specifically directed to my law enforcement brothers and sisters out there, but civilians too, like, that are going about their daily lives as if everything is normal. Like, everything is not normal.
No.
Like, far from it. And we cannot accept this as the new normal. I cannot hear that anymore. This cannot be the new normal. We're not an authoritarian state. We're supposed to be a democracy where people's rights are protected. And if we don't fight back and demand that the government back down, this will continue and very likely get much worse. And so, like, I think, like, if you're in law enforcement and you think that this is okay, at what point are you going to reach where that line in your sand has been crossed? Like, are you going to be okay with coming to take me and my family to an isolation center if one of us has a close contact or a positive case? Like, I don't think we're there yet, but we have already hit a lot of milestones that I never thought we'd see in Canada. So please think about that, have that in your mind so that you know when you've had enough, because people are afraid. People in Canada are afraid that they're going to get put away in an isolation center.
And it's happening right now in Australia. There's a video that came out today, a girl, beautiful, healthy young girl, give testimony of her story in one of the concentration camps in Australia. They're building another one. I can't remember the name of the video or the girl, but just, you'll find it easily, anybody who wants to see it. It's horrifying.
Well, we've had them here now.
Yeah.
And one I specifically read about not long ago was in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, which ironically enough is where I lived as a toddler before we moved to Alberta. And when I read about it, it was a CBC News article, and the health authority that was talking about it they were indicating that it is a secure isolation facility for people who knowingly break the rules of their quarantine. But what I didn't find in that article, and I should go dig a little bit deeper on that to find the specifics on that, was it was talked about how people knowingly breaking their quarantine when they are contagious. I'm like, okay, well, what is the criteria for contagious?
Yeah.
Are they actually sick and going out in public? Which, I mean, I think the vast majority of the population would know better, right? Especially considering everything that we've learned over the last couple of years. But what if it's just a close contact? What if it's just someone with a positive PCR test or a positive test that could be a false positive, but they're completely healthy, right? Like, I mean, we already discussed, you already gave like a very detailed answer about what asymptomatic means. So are we going to start forcing people to isolate even
Yeah,
if they're asymptomatic?
yeah, it's not even about that. Like when you watch this girl's story, all that happened was there was one person like within some radius that had it. They weren't sick. They just had a positive, whatever. And everyone knows the false positive rate is like 95%. So this girl was in proximity. So they demanded that she get tested, and she originally said she hadn't been, and then anyway, it escalated so fast, and they came a paddy wagon camp. Anyway, I don't want to ruin it. It's horrifying, but none of it was based on anything scientific, truthful. She was lied to. They promised that when she got to the facility that she could just take a test and go home if it was negative, and they refused her the option to get tested and put her away for 2 weeks. And they kept threatening her while she was there. If she was not compliant with all of their weird ass rules, which you'll see in the video, they'll keep her for another two weeks. I mean, it's like scolding really badly behaved children or convict. I don't even know. I couldn't even process what was going on to this girl. It's insane. And that's happening today. I mean, I wouldn't believe it if I didn't see it today.
Well, I mean, if it's happening in Australia, it could happen in Canada.
Of
Like
course.
we're very similar nations, right? Like they have had a stricter COVID response than Canada, but we've hit a lot of milestones that I never would have thought we would see in Canada. I mean, I think the United States still has like some strongholds, right? Where you don't mess with certain states.
Yeah.
But Canada doesn't have that. I thought Alberta and Saskatchewan would be that for Canada. I thought they would be the holdouts. And that was kind of like a part of my wife and I's contingency plan. Is like, okay, if things really go sideways, we're going to bail out west, back home to our families, where we can have some level of freedom. But that's not even an option right now. We could still be closer to family, but they're still applying all the same restrictions. So like that's, please, I beg my law enforcement colleagues, do the right thing, right? Use your investigator's mind and be ready to do the right thing. The government has no power if the population says no, and if the police say no. If our enforcement arm says no, that's too far, we're not doing that, then the government has to be like, oh, well, I guess that's too far and we're not doing that, right? So the population and the police need to stop complying. We need to stand up for what's right and make real evidence-based decisions, not just regurgitate what the official narrative keeps saying. So sorry, okay, I'm done.
Awesome.
Jessica, I'll put your website. I do not consent in the show description.
And my Substack too. That's becoming a good information source for people.
Yeah, I'll put that there too, because I did that. Is that recent? Did you just start doing that?
Well, yes. Yeah.
You're like, okay.
I'm putting up a lot of content, so it's like, yesterday I put 3 things up, and today I wrote one and knocked it out of the park, I gotta say. So yeah, there's some good stuff in there, and I'm always pretty good humored about it. So yeah, it's worth sharing.
Great. Yeah. So I'll put all that stuff in the show description. I also just emailed you guys if there's anything specific, or just email me everything and make sure I don't miss anything. I'll put in the show description everything. And yeah, go ahead, Danny.
One thing that we've talked about as a group, I don't know how this will be received, but with staffing shortages, that's a major concern in the RCMP, even pre-COVID, has been my entire career. If you're losing, if you're getting burnt out because you're picking up the slack because a bunch of us got put on leave without pay,
yeah,
say no. Don't take the overtime shifts. Stand in solidarity with us and say, no, I'm not gonna make do so that we can continue providing, a level of service without proper resources. I mean, we never had proper resources, but like, if you're getting burnt out, say no. Stand with us. Stand with Mounties for Freedom. Even if 50% of the RCMP membership said, yeah, no, we're not doing that. You let our colleagues come back to work. You let our healthy, willing colleagues come back to work. The RCMP would have to go to the government and say, oh, we got a situation here, right? Like, businesses and government organizations need us as their employees way more than we need them as managers, right? They don't function without us.
Yeah.
Last thing, I promise. Thank you.
Thank you so much for like I said, being outspoken, being brave. My heart goes out to anybody like yourself who is putting what's right above your career. Like you said, all the other social pressures that come with being outspoken, with people judging you or maybe disconnecting with you because of your views. It's not easy. So, and coming from somebody who's been sharing my thoughts on online through a podcast since 2013, I know all about how no matter what you say, you're going to piss off some people, and that's okay, because as long as you're being honest and you're willing to have the discussion, which I always am, I'm not afraid of being outspoken, because I'm not married to any idea. So it's like, we can talk about it. Let's talk about it, right? So so thank you so much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy. Hopefully, we're all fighting to get Jessica into a restaurant so she can have a glass of wine. That's really our purpose.
And we're fighting to get me on Rogan.
Yes, absolutely.
You I just told Mickey Willis that last night too. I'm like, dude, we got to get you in Rogan.
Yeah. He wants to meet me. You want to meet me?
You wouldn't be the first surfer he's had on there. He's had who was it?
Laird Hamilton.
Yeah, right.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. And he's an interesting guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
they talk about diet and all kinds of like holistic health and spirituality and everything.
And isn't his wife fascinating too? Right? She's
Yeah. Gabrielle.
Yes. She's very fascinating too. Yeah. She's been on there too, and she's very fascinating. Yeah, those were good podcasts. So, but yeah, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I will send you guys the show once it's up and live. And thanks again, guys. Hopefully, we all reconnect again in the near future with brighter news.
Thank you for the opportunity, Ricky, and thank you, Jessica, for the invite.
Oh, my pleasure. I knew this would be good. It's until the next time, as they say.
You betcha.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.